Thank you. Mananas situas, buenas and hafaday, todos hamzu. This public hearing by the Committee on Human Resources, Hagatnya Revitalization, Regional Affairs, Public Libraries, Telecommunications, Technology, and Federal and Foreign Affairs is called to order. For the record, it is 9:06 this morning. I'd like to thank the audio team for setting up the slide presentations that will be done this morning. For the record, and in accordance with 5 GCA Chapter 8, subsection 8107, public hearing notices were sent out on Monday, April 22nd, 2024, adhering to the 5-day notice requirement, and a second public notice on Saturday, April 27th, 2024, 48 hours prior. In addition, this hearing was noticed on the legislature's website at www.guamlegislature.com, the Government of Guam's public notice website, and through a TV advertisement on Public Broadcasting System Guam, which is PBS Guam. Written testimonies may be submitted by emailing Senator Muña Barnes at guamlegislature.org, or you may hand deliver it to our office at Suite 411, 134 West Soledad Avenue, Aganya, Guam, 96910. On the agenda, ladies and gentlemen, we have the updates on the implementation of the Government of Guam's new Financial Management Information System, which is the FMIS system, including status of employee training for currently available and upcoming modules, concerns and issues raised during training and use of the new FMIS and how they have been resolved, status of finalizing and bringing new modules online, plans to ensure adequate funding for the remainder of the FMIS contract, and summaries of improvements resulting from the new FMIS, including but not limited to any reductions in processing time, increases in productivity, or savings in expenditures caused by the prior use of the AS 400. Joining me this morning, and I'd like to extend my undakulina situas masi, we have Speaker Therese Terlai, Mananan situas, Senator Chris Barnett to my left, and then also Senator Chris Duenas. Thank you very much for joining us. Before we proceed with the discussion, I would first like to provide some general rules of conduct for all who are in attendance. The conduct of this hearing shall be as follows. Those testifying will be recognized in the order of the sign-up on the sign-in sheet. Written testimony may be read and submitted to the committee. Please provide our legislative staff with your written testimony for photocopying. Persons will be allowed to present oral testimony only once. Lengthy testimony should be summarized to 5 minutes. Once you are done, please remain in the room for any questions by my colleagues. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character of the motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted, and any violations of this general rule of conduct will result in the removal from the hearing room. When you speak, ladies and gentlemen, please make sure that the microphone is on and that you speak into the microphone. Please state your name for the record and where you are from. Those who do not follow these rules of engagement can be removed from this public hearing room. With that, I will do my opening remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, the former financial management information system used by the Government of Guam was known back then as the AS 400, and it was brought online nearly 40 years ago. And for more than a decade, local experts like those in the Office of the Public Accountability, the Department of Administration, and officials in multiple administrations and legislatures have underscored the need to modernize the FMIS. This followed a failed effort from our government around the time of the Y2K crisis, which was more than 20 years ago, which literally scrapped a deal worth millions of dollars to replace the AS400 with a system produced by the Oracle. With all this in mind, I and many others were thrilled when the administration at the beginning of this year unveiled the first phase of a new FMIS through a multi-year contract worth nearly $31 million with the Maryland-based company Performer Software USA. Now, about 4 months later, this body would like to receive updates and gauge the progress of this massive undertaking, and ahead of this year's budget discussions, be best prepared to continue this important investment into the new fiscal year. And as we've seen in the past, failing to replace the AS400 is costly financially, of course, but also is costly with thousands of man-hours devoted to planning, training, and the usage of this new FMIS. We all want this effort to succeed, and in the spirit, we are here this morning to receive information from the Department of Administration, and if my colleagues have questions for them, I see that the Office of Technology is here also, both Mr. Byrne and Mr. Lahan, who I have oversight of. With that being said, I will start, Mr. Lahan, with the, I will invite the Director of the Department of Administration and of course, OTEC that are here. You guys are on the table with your team. And if you need anyone else during the course of the presentation to come up, you're more than welcome to call them up, okay? So in the event to both directors, if anybody else that's not on the table and wishes to, you may yield to at any time, I'm going to go ahead and ask the Sergeant of Arms to go ahead and do the official swearing in at this time, and anyone else that may be able to answer any questions of concern that may come up. They're more than welcome to stand up at this time also. Fair enough? Please.
Please stand and raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, do you all affirm that any and all information you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Madam Chair, you're under oath. You may proceed.
Situ Smasi, Sergeant of Arms. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. At this time, I will begin with you, Director Byrne. You may start the presentation and yield to whoever you need to. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I'm Edward Byrne, the Director of Administration. Thank you for inviting us here today to highlight the Guam Financial Information System, generally known as GFMIS. With me here today are, from my right, Mr. Frank Lujan, the government's Chief Technology Officer, Teresa Rivers, who's the DOA CFO. To my left is Brian Welsh, who's the project manager from Performer, the prime contractor. And on my far left is Lisa Fisher, the Deputy Director of the Department of Administration. Behind me, but unfortunately I can't see through the back of my head, are some members of DOA, and I will recognize them later when I can turn around and recognize them for your, so that you can be prepared for them. We have prepared a slide deck to address the questions set forth on the agenda forwarded to us, Madam Chairperson. We also have some videos that we would like to play after the slide deck. However, I will trust that you will permit me to make some preliminary remarks which will give you an in-depth understanding of actions to date. Firstly, and most importantly, I would like to thank, recognize, and commend to you the hard work which DOA staff have put into commissioning this software. Accounting, HR, and GSA have all been involved in this for over a year. and we would not have been able to bring this online without their efforts. I would also like to note that BBMR and Office of Technology have been heavily involved in this effort, and their contributions have been invaluable. Of course, Performa, the prime contractor for this project, have also worked hard to commission this system. Replacing a 34-year-old system is not a small task, and the longer the delay, the bigger the task. The legacy AS400 system, a cutting-edge product 34 years ago, no longer meets our needs. More of this in the presentation. There are, indeed, very few products and services which were commonplace decades ago and which have not been replaced by modern devices. We have all been happy to adopt new technology, computer mouses, iPhone, internet, and instant communication. I'm sure that we all felt uncomfortable the first time we used a computer mouse or a touch screen. It took us a while. Now we have touchless payments, FaceTime, and social media. All took some time for us to adapt. GFMIS has been in operation for less than 3 months. Payments are being made daily, purchase orders issued, and GG1s moved from initiation to notices of personnel action. Thank you to all who helped make this happen. Already, amongst our island colleagues, the US Virgin Islands and possibly one other island jurisdiction is considering changing their financial management system to a Performa-based system. As you will learn from our presentation, we have moved from a mainframe-based system, the only available solution 34 years ago, to an in-cloud suite with a paperless process integrated into the financial and human resources applications. No local hardware is required, since these programs can be accessed from anywhere, from a workstation, laptop, tablet, or smartphone. Our presentation will feature the reduction in backlogged invoices and requisitions inherited from the legacy system, which, as I have described, was never intended to cope with the volume of transactions which now have to be accounted for due to the increase in local and federal funds. The auditors, in their management letter and in their federal compliance report, have recommended migrating to a modern system, and we have followed their recommendation. This will make it easier to produce financial reports, both on a generally accepted accounting principle basis and on the budgetary basis needed for governmental reporting. By having a working fixed asset module, we will satisfy one of those findings reported by the auditors. We can finally account for transactions in the way in which I was taught as best practice when I qualified as a CPA. We can post dashboards, and we will. We will have an employee portal so that employees can access their own records, such as verifications of employment, saving valuable administration time for human resources employees. We can spend less time preparing information and more time analyzing it. We can attract employees who want to leverage their accounting training into an accounting career using up-to-date tools. We could have decided that this was all too difficult. We could have left it to others to make this huge effort at some time in the future. That would not have been responsible. That would not have been a service to the people of Guam. Change can be stressful, but change in the pursuit of progress is an investment. In a year, we will look back at the first few weeks during which, of course, we have to remedy issues, just as we did when we introduced or expanded the legacy system. We will look back and wonder how we managed before with invitation receival now only a click away. Teresa Rivers, the DOA CFO, will take you through the slide presentation, and then we will, if with your permission, have a video, after which we will be happy to entertain questions. Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Good morning, Teresa Rivers with DOA. I will be addressing the questions that was brought up as part of the slides. If I could have the slides on the screen, please. If you could go to slide 1. So one of the key points that was we needed to make sure we present to you today is the status of employee training. As of last week, you would note the accounting and procurement section of the GFMIS, 95% of the staff, which is basically DOA and GSA, have been trained and will continue to be trained as part of the on the job. 82% across all agencies that are responsible for loading and processing information on the system. The 100% have been trained. Of all those are required to access the HR module. That's mainly the DOA team, the administrative service officers, and certifying officers across agencies. From payroll, 100% have been trained. Again, the bulk of these are in DOA and the payroll timekeepers across agencies. On the budget model, about 80% of the staff that should have access have been trained and will continue to be trained on the job. The last section is the data warehouse. This is a repository section where all the reports are kept. This is currently 40% in training, as a number of information has yet to be completed and are still a work in progress, which our colleague from Performa would touch on later on. The next slide, please. Some of the concerns that were raised during training and how they have been resolved. One of the biggest concerns was the internet connectivity, given the system is web-based. Since the launch of the system, connectivity has been stable with no major outage since the implementation. Availability of compatible versions of Excel, Microsoft Excel for users was another concern, as it was identified during the training. 99% of users now have the updated version of Excel, and we're still finding new users that need to convert to the new version. One of the additional key concerns flagged by users of AS400 was in relation to missing fields in the system that needed to capture mandatory information on vendors, purchase orders, and invoice data. 70% has been addressed of those issues, with the remaining are currently still in progress and in testing phases. We also had an incomplete fixed asset register, which was a repeat audit finding in future audits. So this system has also allowed us and pushed us to review and clean our fixed asset data. And this is still in progress, about 90% on our side. For the accounting side, the entire fixed asset register has been reviewed. The data is now ready for migration to the new system, and that's expected to be completed by July 2024. One of the biggest concerns that was also flagged by staff was the time and effort required by everybody in DOA mostly to validate the data that's migrated from AS400 to the new system. Some progress has been made with data validation. There's still some work to be done in that space, and a lot of the effort by the support team in our in-house team in technology is working on that daily, in addition to the business as usual activities. The other concern was how other systems used by other agencies, i.e. the PH Pro that's used by the Department of Health, where the bulk of the data that comes in for federal grants and for paying out of federal grants, how that would interface with the new system, as it was directly interfaced with AS400 in the past. The auto interface is in progress. Data is currently uploaded daily, reviewed by the various teams, mostly in the accounts payable and federal grants team, and these are then manually uploaded to 365, which is the new system. The other concern also was, how do we address bank reconciliation? How does that impact the reconciliations daily? We are pleased to confirm we do have an automated reconciliation tool that's about 80% working, and it's currently been tested. We expect to have that up and running by July. But bulk of the work for the team to recon the transactions coming from, for the different bank accounts are now easily done. In terms of other systems that we currently use that are not part of the first release, this is the availability of a POS system that's used by DRT and our TOG team. That is, options are being presented and are being reviewed. This system is also targeting making sure we track our revenue collections appropriately. And then the other concern that was flagged by the teams was the availability of a federal module, grants module. This module is in testing phase at the moment, and the first release is expected to be launched in July this year, and then it should be fully functional in October 2024. However, the federal accounting team have managed the workload with interim standard operating procedures, and they're able to process those transactions, review and process in the interim. And you will see the data later on in a few other slides. Status of finalizing and bringing new modules online. So the data warehouse, which is the repository of all the information where we would get our reports, it's about 80% complete with basic data available. What's not in the data warehouse at the moment is the HR, payroll, and the grants data. This is expected to be in this data warehouse by the end of July. The other modules, this includes the payroll system, which is currently being implemented, and it's rolled out in phases. We have 44 agency divisions in the new payroll system, with 198 agency divisions remaining to be migrated to the new payroll system. The grants module is also in development and testing phase, and it's on track to be fully functional in October 2024. Then the last module is the revenue module, which is expected to replace the current DRT and the systems used by our TOG team. And options, as mentioned earlier, are being reviewed, and we anticipate this in future releases. Going on to summary of improvements resulting from the new system. So one of the first ones we've noticed is the paperless side. We no longer have to print a lot of paper. Everything is online. Obviously, this contributes to our reduction in carbon footprints and paper costs. We also now have an audit trail readily available for audit evidence, and this will minimize the need for us to retrieve, locate, and present data to information for audit requests. We do have various audits ongoing at the moment. The other improvement is, we've had a number of repeat audit findings across the board. With the implementation of the new system, we expect there will be less corrective action plans. It will result in a well-managed government operations. We also notice a workflow monitoring end-to-end, where the approvers of the process will see all the documentation from start to finish before a decision has been made, whether it's to reject a payment because there's not insufficient documentation, incorrect approvers and whatnot. That's all visible in the new system. As we spoke about earlier, there is an automation in The reconciliation, banking reconciliation side, that's about 80% completed. Obviously, there's lower maintenance costs as we no longer need to buy hardware, service, and whatnot to store data. This is in the cloud. Therefore, we can redirect needed expenses to other areas. We do now have control of a system. In the past, we didn't have control over AS400, from what I was advised. Now, this system will be owned by GovGuam. Overall, oversight by management is one of the key improvements, and I'm sure the director will allude to that. He can see everything end to end now, and challenges some of the payments brought for payment when it's not in line with processes. And then, of course, we have the financial transparency for directors can go in and view items that they need to see and check. Going on to sharing with you the volume of transactions that have been processed in the new system. So you'll note the first line reference federal payments. So since February, there are about 11,000 or 10,700 payments. And as of April, for the federal side alone, there's only 365 remaining from that bunch. We do have these drawdown every week, so the numbers will continue to increase. So in terms of federal, as of April 26, the team have processed over 10,303 invoice payments. On an overall accounts payable outside of the federal payments, since February, there are about 50,000 invoices in the queue for payment. So both teams have to navigate through a new system with some workarounds, pending fixes. As a result, for accounts payable, about 20,000 of those payments have been processed and released. 29,000 are currently being worked on, and the number would have reduced by today. So in total, for invoices processed in 365 since February, we processed over 60,000. We have 30,000 to go. Again, this is taking into account navigating through a new system as well. And then the next section is referencing the requisitions that are received by our GSA team pre-implementation and after we implemented the new system. So for the requisitions, there were 968 requisitions migrated to the new system. 594 are opened. 101 are still in review by the agencies and the GSA team. 39 of those have been approved, with 204 of those been closed and processed. Then the next set of items are referencing the new requisitions. I'm happy to go through the details if you would like me to. So going on to the next slide, this talks about the new payroll system. It gives you the data on how that's been implemented. We understand there has been a number of concerns brought to members as a result of this migration. So as of last Friday, we've migrated over 44 division agencies. So salaries for the employees for these agencies were successfully processed into the new payroll system. However, there were some issues with the data migrated from the new payroll system to the new from the new payroll system to the new accounting system. As a result of that, reconciling that data, that has resulted in delays for the first batch. However, on April 22nd, the first payroll that we moved over to the new payroll system, all the vendor payments were processed and remitted for that pay period. The second lot of agencies that moved across on the payroll of April 6th, there were also issues with the deductions, and we worked with the teams to ensure the vendor payments were remitted, and those were resolved as of last Friday. The remaining divisions to be moved across are currently on hold until we can ensure that the reconciliation side between the two, the data between the two systems are fully reconciled and cleared before we can move on to onboard the next set of agencies. But it's important to note our teams are working with 2 different systems at the moment. A new payroll system for the new agencies that have moved across, and the remaining are still processed out of the old system.
And Senators, I could just mention, it's not on here, but we've processed over 1,300 GG1s through the EHRP system since we started on February 5th.
And the last two slides covers the payments and gives you a summary of what Guam has paid to to Performa, our vendor. And that gives you a detail. This is basically all of what we've paid compared to what the schedule of payment should be per the contract. The details are there. And if I might reference for year 1, per the contract, we're supposed to pay Performa $8,992,000. We've paid $8,744,000. They haven't charged us yet for $247,000 worth of retainage fees per the contract. Year 2 so far, we've been invoiced for $2.7 million versus per the contract, $2.9 million. You will also note, we know there were some questions on change requests, and those are listed there for your reference. As of as of March, the total that we've paid Performa is $11.8 million versus what the contract says should be $11.9 million. And then the next slide is an extract of the contract that shows the schedule of payments agreed to for Performa. That completes the slide presentation, and thank you.
Ed, do you have anybody else to present before I ask Frank to say his statement?
Can we please run the videos that are also on the same drive?
Yes. Audio, did you get that?
Distribution. What makes these reports different from the legacy system is the ability to filter and customize the report directly on the system by department or division level, by employee, account number, by overtime or regular time, and so many other data fields. This HR system is currently pulling data from the FMIS systems for accounting, payroll, and budgeting data and visually shows the legacy account numbers for mapping purposes. Eventually, these reports will be found in the FMIS data warehouse in upcoming releases, but to satisfy BBMers' need for these reporting features now, the new HR system allows them to break down all the data they need from the FMIS to track charges to accounts using filters and simple search queries.
The data warehouse is designed to provide a central source of consistent, integrated data from all GFMIS systems. Right now, you can access legacy data up to 5 years, and current accounting and budget data. Eventually, the data warehouse will have HR, payroll, and grants data integrated as well. One of the key features in the data warehouse is the ability for users to access current accounting and budget reports using an online analytical processing OLAP connection tool, also known as the Cube. Once connected to the data cube, users can click and drag fields to filter and customize the reports. This demonstration will include budget allotment and budget statistics reports from budget, and a ledger journal report from accounting. We'll start with budget reports. Depending on your user access, you can view the department you're in and drill down to the division, job number, account number, and fund types. You can also filter by year and origin year, which you can use for carry-forward data. For accounting reports, you can drill down to transactions, filter by account types, fund types, journal name, and transaction date. You can also drag the transaction date to drill down and view the detail of the transaction of the journals. After creating a report, users can download or export a copy of the report with the toolbar above the reporting screen to Excel, PDF, image, CSV, or HTML. The system also enables users to save the query for this particular report for future use.
One of the key features of the EHRP web is to streamline the process for the GG1 request for personnel action. Previously, you needed to submit a paper form to initiate this process. We've embraced digital transformation to replace cumbersome paper forms with smarter, more efficient methods. The system is designed to help streamline this GG1 process. Once a GG1 has gone through its approval process with its department, BBMR, and any related HR sections, the GG1 will reach DOA HR records, where the GG1 then transforms into a notification of personnel action, or NPA. DOA HR records will then final post the NPA. During this stage in the NPA process, the system either creates a new master for a new employee or updates the master for an existing employee. The record supervisor then forwards the NPA to the payroll staging, where payroll will be able to post the NPA on their system.
One of the features of the payroll system is the timesheet approval status tracking. Like the HR system, the payroll platform uses a similar method to show which users have approved each timesheet as it progresses through the approval flow. Once logged in, navigate to the Employee Management section, where you will find all employee timesheets organized by their current status. Approvals are visually indicated by green circle icons under the status column. The icons are labeled to denote each role in the approval process: T for timekeeper, S for supervisor, C for certifying officer, A for agency director or appointing authority, and P for payroll technician. As timesheets get approved, you can immediately see which timesheets are pending approval, which have been approved, and which require corrections. Approving a timesheet is straightforward and efficient. Just select a timesheet, review the details, and approve with a single click. It's as easy as that.
Is the presentation done? Ed?
Yeah, that's the last video.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and yield to Mr. Lahan to say his opening remarks before we ask our questions from our panel up here. Also joining me, ladies and gentlemen, this morning are our colleague, Senator Paris. Good morning. Thank you for being here. And I see Senator Joanne Brown and Senator Tello. Thank you for being here this morning. Mr. Lahan?
Good morning, Madam Chairman. Good morning, Speaker Talahi, Senator Burnett, Senator Brown, Senator Taitigui, Senator Duenas, and Senator Perez. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today on the progress of the Guam Financial Management Information System transformation, as outlined in the Department of Administration Director's testimony and status report. As the Governor of Guam's Chief Technology Officer, I wholeheartedly support the ongoing efforts to modernize our financial infrastructure. Transitioning from the AS400 system to the new GFMIS represents a significant step forward. This over $30 million investment signifies our administration's commitment to greater efficiency, transparency, and accountability within government operations. While the DOA report acknowledges initial challenges, including training discrepancies and data mapping areas, it's important to remember that these are common hurdles encountered during large-scale system implementations. The growing pains we're experiencing are temporary setbacks on the path to a more robust financial management system. Transforming a legacy paper-driven financial workflow to a more efficient paperless and accountable workflow is a monumental challenge, but achievable as we all continue to work together. The DOA, in collaboration with our technology partners, is actively addressing these issues, such as enhancing training programs to ensure government personnel are comfortable navigating the new system, implementing stricter data quality control measures to minimize errors and delays, and providing ongoing support to address user concerns and troubleshoot any technical difficulties. Looking ahead, the successful implementation of GFMIS promises significant benefits. Streamlined financial processes, GFMIS will automate many manual tasks, leading to faster processing times and improved efficiency. Enhanced transparency. The system will provide real-time access to financial data, fostering greater public trust in government spending. And lastly, improved decision-making. GFMIS will offer robust reporting capabilities, enabling data-driven financial management. I'm confident that with continued collaboration between DOA, our technology partners, and this esteemed body, we will overcome the current challenges and successfully complete the GFMIS transformation. This project represents a critical investment in Guam's future, paving the way for a more efficient and accountable government. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to testify. I'm open to answer any questions or concerns.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lahan. Before we start the questionings, Mr. Byrne, I'd like to see if the other two folks on the panel would like to say a few words as an opening.
Yes, thank you. But could I also recognize the last time I turned around the people behind me that have actually put a whole lot of effort into this. There's John Camacho, Chris Ilagan, Mike Cabral, Ivan Pema, and of course Goody Rosario, the Deputy Financial Manager from Accounting, who have all put hours and hours into making the system work. And Andy Kittiger, the Acting Chief Procurement Officer, who has also been very instrumental in making that part of the system work.
Thank you very much, and as noted early, for my colleagues who didn't hear, the team that's sitting in the back, the audience, thank you for your hard work and your efforts in trying to get this new GMIS program into effect. And I know this is just the beginning, We have to go through this roller coaster journey, and we hope that full implementation will be sooner than later. So I want to just extend my thank yous to you back for all your hard work as the government employees working with the team up here to move this, to facilitate this program forward. So, Mr. Welch, or?
Both my colleagues here say they be prepared to answer questions, but they have no prepared remarks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Byrne. Then we'll go ahead and get started as we looked at the agenda that was, the agenda that was provided and sequenced. I will look at the status of employee training for currently available and upcoming modules. And I know that in your presentation, some of the questions may have already been answered, but in the interest of making sure that the questions that I have noted down through this process and setting up this, I'm just going to go ahead and go through the questionings, okay? So first one is, when inviting employees to train on a module that is being prepped to go online, how would you classify the participation? And I'll preface that by saying we have received anecdotal information that the trend has been low participation on pre-launch training, followed by a rush of requests for training when a module goes online and employees find their access limited or revoked. So can you detail the procedure for employees who use the FMIS to be trained, and what credentials are suspended or revoked to those employees who do not complete the training on the new FMIS module?
Sorry, thank you for the question. So the initial stages of planning the training, the system are role-based. So the invitation to the training, to the members to train, was initially to the senior leaders of the agencies, initially for the accounting system across the board for agencies to nominate. Those are currently the members or the staff that are currently responsible for processing information into the system. For instance, from a GSA standpoint, the officers that are responsible for loading requisitions, submitting purchase order requests. And for on the accounting side, any of their, and this would usually mostly be the administration officers and the certifying officers that were responsible, but the notification, I understand, was sent to the leaders to nominate those users that need to participate in those trainings. So the request was sent out, and the question was asked for the leaders to confirm who needs to participate, and the submissions were provided, and that's how the training plan was set up to cater to those staff that are responsible for those tasks.
On the credential part, as you look at the leaders, are there any of those who have not completed the training that have been assigned to you for this launch?
Based on the stats that we've got and the tracker that the team have kept across all agencies, we were able to ascertain about 82% that have participated in training, and this percentage is based on the respondents. So the respondents, or those that participated in the training, that's what the percentage is based off on.
So how are we going to ascertain the complete 100% for getting the rest of the agencies on? What are we doing to date? And maybe that's a question for Ed, right? What processes do you have in place to make sure that 100% of the government of Guam is in tune to this training mechanism?
Thank you. I guess there are two responses to that. I mean, we obviously as the CFO kind of said, but maybe I'll say it a little bit more abruptly, is that many agency directors didn't participate or didn't fully participate in the training. As you can see, in a paperless system, the agency directors are needed to sign off on various activities, just as they would have done on a paper system. We certainly, and I've mentioned it in cabinet meetings, and I will keep on mentioning it, that we certainly want agency directors to be more participatory in the whole system. As far as staffing is concerned, I think at the beginning, to be honest, many agencies thought, oh, well, this is something I can delegate to somebody else. But the system that we put in, and we told them this from the very beginning, is authority-based, right? If you're a certifying officer, then we require you to certify that piece of paper, not for you to delegate it to somebody else, which shouldn't happen either in a paper system or in an electronic system. So that has led to us restricting access to some people, and that of course has led to some complaints that we can't get in the system. But it's a rather rough tool to say if you're not trained, you can't get into the system. And one of the issues we had with the procurement system was somebody doing something unauthorized, and it caused a whole downstream effect on the flow of requisitions. So our tool basically is, if you want access to the system, you need to be trained.
Okay, so then my next question is then, based on the system that was utilized in the past as the AS400, what percentage of the AS400 users are trained in the online modules right now? Is that the 80% or is it more?
Sorry, the 82%, this is for the accounting system. This is the...
So they've transitioned from the AS400 into this new...
The new system. So users that need to use the accounting system for their jobs, that's the 82% that we've documented to date.
And do you have a list of those who have not been transferred over, trained yet?
Yes, so there's a tracker that our support team, financial management support team in DOA, in accounting, they do have a tracker of those that were invited to the training and those that didn't respond, those that didn't participate. So that tracker is kept and it's updated.
So then the steps for government of Guam, what are the steps that GovGuam is taking to ensure better participation during the pre-launch training or this training that's going on? What are the mechanisms in place?
I understand our director has continued to engage his colleagues at his level. We rely on the directors at the agencies to encourage their people to participate in the training. We also need to work together with our teams to ensure that we do set up the timing and we coordinate the training properly to accommodate people's availability as well. There's a collaboration that needs to happen actively.
And there's also a list that can be provided to this August body after this meeting to see what maybe next steps need to be taken if they're not on the system yet. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Is the government in Guam ensuring that local employees are available as trainers for these modules? So when our contract with the FMIS vendor is finished, new government of Guam workers can be trained to use the FMIS? Barry?
Madam Chairperson, this is Brian Welch from Performa. Yes, we've allocated several online training sessions or modules for them to use post-implementation. So if a new employee or someone who has not partaken in the training prior to today needs that training, we don't have to set up a classroom or have people facilitate those trainings. We can actually give them online CBTs or computer-based trainings to allow them to get the approval needed in order to access the system.
So then there is room for the trainer workshop. Is that possible? So then can current employees today request that they receive a trainer workshop? Is that?
Yes, they can request the training. There's actually a process they go through a service request. If they need access, they can follow the steps to participate in that training, whether it's through a CBT or if we need a whole classroom training for more difficult modules, we can do that as well. And we have been doing that since Go Live.
So you have that capability in place?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll move on to the concerns and issues raised during the training and the use of the new FMIS and how they have been resolved. Have employees provided feedback on what they liked about the currently offered training and what they would like improved?
Yes, they have. There's a service, there's an option for them to submit any concerns or any defects they find with the system and highlight what they need to change. And some of them are already tracked and being addressed as part of the next releases.
Anybody else like to add? If not, I understand that built into the FMIS process is work to establish the features, tools, and other components of the FMIS modules. Have any of the concerns raised during the training been related to this feedback not being brought to the attention of DOA, OTEC, or our vendor prior to the start of the training? Have there been any of those concerns?
Madam Chairperson, so just to take a step back, the original training for the system occurred back in December of last year, where, of course, holiday month, travel month, we went through the training and we offered feedback forms in the training, asking those that were receiving the training for their feedback to enhance the training material. We took that feedback, we enhanced it, and we continue to train post-Go Live. Now, as people are receiving those training, there is a service request form that allows them to offer us feedback, not just to the system itself, but actually the training modules or the CBTs, computer-based training modules that we offer them to get them up to speed or to get new employees to task. So yes, we do have the feedback process through service requests to allow us to augment and update our training material as we go through the process.
Okay, that answers my sub-item A, that's in simpler terms, have you found that there's valuable feedback on building the FMIS modules that are coming in too late or later that is ideal, and you just said that. So then when this feedback is given, is GovGuam able to add or delete any features, components after the module's launch? Does this cost any additional expenses to the contract, for instance, as like a change order in that effort?
Madam Chairperson, it depends on the module in which and the enhancement. Some of the enhancements are deemed what we would call break fix, where we went live, it works as intended, but there's little tweaks or issues with the system. That service comes in, of course, those are fixed without any type of change order or any cost. With the exception of the accounting system, this is a multi-year project, so anything that comes in as an enhancement, we add to what's called a maintenance queue. It's just a list of enhancement requests that come from end users they would like to see as changes in the system. We then take that list to Director Byrne and his staff, and he validates them as, yes, this is a good or not good requirement, and if it's deemed needed, we prioritize that and roll that into the release schedule. So as you know, in February, we went live with Release 1. After 2 or 3 months, we've got lots of feedback, lots of enhancement requests. We ran those through the director and his team. They checked off, I think there were 17 of them. He checked off, I think, 12 of them. We were down to 5. And those 5 were implemented as a part of a 1.1 or 1.2 release based on the feedback that we got from the end users.
Okay, so then my next question was, what are the most common or most concerning issues or complaints received by employees who use the FMIS, and have they been handled and resolved based on on the reporting issues that you've sent to the director?
Yes. So there's one of the key items that was causing delays was when items were migrated from the old system, there was an issue that was identified with signatures. So that was worked on, and it was confirmed last Friday. It's going into production, and it was tested fine. So the team that has reduced the work that the team have had to track manual processing of contracts. So that was already implemented as of last Friday.
Is there also, based on these things coming in from the employees that are going through the training, you have an allotted list of issues and concerns that are detailed that you can look at, Ed?
Yeah, yes, we've created that list.
Yes, so it is in the system where you can always look, like, these were the concerns before, this is what the resolves are, and this is the finished product item, right?
Yes, so that's a service request. That is correct.
But Madam Chair, so you look at the other side of this, we also have many comments about, oh, this is going to save me time, or this process is much better than the previous process. And once people have got a little bit more used to dealing with issues paperlessly, that they obviously see the advantages in doing it that way, and you get an instant response. The system responds to you, a piece of paper doesn't.
And that's why it's important that we go through this process so that we have we see where we're at today, how we need to go, and how much more is it going to take for us to be at 100%. So thank you for continuing to answer the questions that we have. The status on finalizing and bringing new modules online. How many modules are online today? And what are the improvements to our daily operations have resulted due to these modules now being used? You'd like me to repeat that? Or?
The second part I would like for you to repeat, please.
How many modules are online today? What improvements to our daily operations have resulted due to those modules now being used?
I will answer which modules are online today and which ones will be in the future. Currently, we have the budget module, the accounting or ERP module, HR module, the payroll module, and what we call the data warehouse or reporting module. Now, these modules are broken down into sub-modules, which we basically, as beginning the contract, we stated these will be the modules that we will roll out as a part of 1.1, and we'll add sub-modules to it as we go through the 4 or 5 year process. So all the modules are currently live, with the exception of grants or federal grants, which we have a couple reports that are going in production in July, and then the full-blown grants module will be live by the end of the calendar year.
Right, so the modules that are still being developed and that are to go online again in July, if you can repeat them for me?
Well, there will be sub-modules in July. It's 1.2, so basically the majority of 1.2 are enhancements to the modules that are already live. That's why it's a point release, like 1.1. The .1 are just enhancements to the releases that are already there. The 2.0 release is a major release, and that's when we will go live with major modules like grants and then the full-blown budgets module.
Right. Just be a little bit more specific on that example, please. Like what modules? I know that you said the payroll and grants data will probably go into effect on 2024. Is that?
So the grants module is a part of the bids platform. That will be a module that when we met with the team, there were 2 reports that they wanted to have, a grants reports that they wanted prior to release 2.0. We pulled those into scope a little bit early. Director Byrne gave us approval. We worked on those, gathered those requirements, and those reports are ready to push into production in July. Probably before July, but in July will be those 2 grant reports.
Okay, so my next question then is, how long does it take for each module to be developed from start to finish, including post-launch tweaks and changes?
depends on the module, Madam Chairperson. I think that an HR payroll module we've been working on for a year, and they're now live or going into production with payroll. Our accounting is now live, so it really depends on the module. But for this project, I think a year is a safe answer for the majority of the modules that are currently in production.
Okay. My next question then is regarding the modules that are not online. Are government of Guam employees still using the AS400 to accomplish these tasks, and will the limited use of the AS400 be needed until every module is brought online? I know that's a hard question, but I gotta ask it.
If it's a hard question, I guess I better try and answer it. Well, the answer is yes. I mean, there are some processes that are still in the AS400 system. The Public Health PH Pro system is run through the AS400 system. We now get a report out of that system, and we post the information that comes out of that report into the 365 system. There's a similar process with the tax refunds that come out of a DRT AS400 system. We have to take that information and post it into the 365 system. There are two stages in doing this. Currently, and I have to say that these systems were put into the accounting system way back in the past without the real consent of DOA at the time. So they were systems that just posted numbers into the old AS400 system. So we've had to take a step back. We've had to put a different membrane, if you like, between the two systems. So we now look at the numbers that go into the new system from the old system, and we deliberately post them. We're going to move to a more automated system, but we're still going to impose that cross-check before they actually get posted into the new system. As the CFO mentioned, there are some payrolls that are being run in the new system, but there are also some payrolls that are being run in the AS400 system. Those payrolls tend to be those that have more complex time recording, in particular the law enforcement agencies that don't have basic 80-hour weeks. Their timekeepers have practiced with the new system, and as each agency feels more confident in their ability to record time accurately in the new system, we will bring them online. But for the moment, basically the agencies that are in the new system are the kind of standard week agencies. The last thing that comes through the AS400 system is revenues. It's always been a problem ever since a decision was taken in the past to so-called separate the reporting of DOA revenues and DRT revenues. Our cashiers are forced to, and we've tried to move away from this with this new integrated system, are forced to look at two different systems in order to post tax revenues. We would like, obviously, to integrate these systems. It's something we looked at, but it was determined at the very beginning of this task that that would involve changing basically some of the DRT practices. So we decided to put it aside. We take the information that comes out of the old system and post it into the new system, but obviously that's not an ideal process.
Okay, how will the modules be changed or modified after they are launched and after the life of the contract? So you get the modules in, right? How will they be changed or modified after they're launched and after the life of the contract.
So for an example, if we take the HR module, as you know, it went live in February with the basic HR GG1 processing. Then again, from there, we continue to enhance it. In the release 1.1 just last month, early this month, we did the attrition reports, the staffing patterns, notification, and an internal labor cost reporting, right? So that's all live now. In July of this year, we have another release coming out, and where we're going to be doing the employee portal will be released, along with certification tracking, online job application, exit survey, and leave share options. And then, of course, again, in 2.0, we will start to continue with more functionality with benefits, open enrollment, retention, register, and leave balance rollover. So I say all that to say that we continue to enhance and implement sub-modules of the HR modules as we go through the tenure of the contract. At the end, there will be service requests that come in if there are enhancements or break fixes to the current functionality that's in production, and we will continue to grow the application and modules from there. So it's a point release process that gets more and more functionality in and supports the current production system.
Okay. Before we go on, I knew that one of the bigger agencies were having really concerns, and again, I'm not wanting to pit one against the other on this process moving forward, and I know that there's going to be a lot of kinks, but it says, as we look at the public hearing going on right now, public health is about 10% trained, and not everyone is trained what steps are being done to have everybody who needs, who is a part of facilitating the system needs to be trained from the agencies. And then there are talks about delays out there, and that from requisitions that are backlogged, and that if the system is supposed to be paperless, the program is still asking to do some manual stuff. So where do we go from that? I'm just seeing it as it's coming up right now, and in all fairness to the concerns from some of the bigger agencies, where do we go from there? And like I said, I know we need to look at the kinks that are in there. How do we facilitate that when you're still asking for manual documentation? Just a little help here, Ed.
Yes, thank you, madam. You know, public health has over 500 people working there. We don't know what each of them does. We would like the agency to tell us who are the most important people that need to be trained. I know, because I reviewed the list that came over the weekend, that some of their financial people have been trained or have taken the training. Some of them haven't. This is something really for the agency. You know, the agency has the same information. This is something for the agency to manage. Public health itself often changes its responsibilities between people, maybe over the matter of weeks. So the impetus should come from the agency. We'll respond if we get the information. But without that, we're a little bit, it's unknown who's responsible sometimes for what task. But we'll certainly respond to it. And in response to the requisitions that we already showed you, that most of the backlog came from the old system, and we've reduced that backlog in the new system. So, and if you look at the numbers there, I think that which came from GSA, some of those requisitions, like 1,200 of those requisitions, if I remember correctly, were actually returned to agencies because they were inappropriately submitted.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. And like I said earlier, as we continue to facilitate this program into its 100% capacity, I know that there still will be issues of concerns, and hence this hearing is being done right now. So again, in the efforts of finding out where we're at, I'll continue with the questions. As it relates to plans to ensure adequate funding for the remainder of the FMIS contract, have any unexpected or additional expenses like change orders resulted in any financial shortfalls during this initial rollout? In other words, is the cash already appropriated and allocated sufficient to take you through the end of the current fiscal year, or will GovGuam require supplemental funding via a legislative appropriation or executive transfer to cover current year's expenses? I know you did a breakdown of where we're at and as far as the payout, so just a reiteration.
Yes, thank you. We operate this contract as for any other contract, a multi-year contract. So the first year was actually paid for with ARPA funds. The current year is being paid for through the budget. We requested the funding be included in the budget, and sufficient funds were included for us to meet the obligations for this year. We've requested the necessary funding for next year in our fiscal 25 submission, and so far, that was included in the executive budget request. I'm confident that we will have the funding included when you discuss the budget in a few months' time.
Thank you, Ed. I will note for the record that the colleague, the Oversight Chair of OFB, is here also listening. So thank you, Senator San Agustin, for joining us this morning. How much funding is needed to cover the remaining cost of the contract, which was reported to be worth the $31 million? Is there any more?
Well, we've expended something like $20 million. We've expended 11.3 so far. We've paid out 11.3 of the 30 million.
Okay.
And just like any other contract, it's subject to annual appropriations. So we would ask you, obviously, to appropriate the appropriate amount to complete the contract.
Okay. So then, I know that the payments from GovGuam to the Performa to date is listed in here again, but just for reiteration, what is GovGuam's strategy to pay out the remaining balance in equal annual installments, or will there be a balloon payment at the end of the contract?
We pay monthly, a monthly installment as we go through the contract, and there's a retention for each installment which gets liquidated when a deliverable is delivered.
Okay. Okay. And since we are also beginning to prepare for the fiscal year 25 budget, how much will GovGuam be requesting to appropriate to this contract in the next fiscal year?
From memory, it's like 7.9 million.
9, right? Oh, 5.1 million, 5.157?
I think you have to add back the retention, so it's more like
Okay.
7 million.
Okay, got it. Will there be any long-term expenses required to continue operating this FMIS system? For instance, in order to maintain or support the online platform, will there be any additional ongoing costs associated with servers for this FMIS?
There are maintenance costs like any other contract. I think. Do you want to mention something about this? Because there's two parts. There's the Microsoft part that Mr. Lujan deals with, and there's the contract maintenance costs, which were about, again from memory, were somewhere between 300,000 and 400,000 a year.
And so that's separate from the 31 million?
After the end of the contract, that is expected to be the annual maintenance cost.
The annualized payment moving forward,
Yes.
right? Would you like to add anything to that, Frank, or?
Well, I'm not privy to the exact numbers, but after implementation, there is going to be hosting in the cloud, and those costs will be borne on a recurring basis, as well as whatever the subscriptions are. So, but I don't have the exact numbers down to 5 years, but there will be recurring charges.
Thank you for noting that, because I want to make sure that if there's any other additional resources that are needed, especially working with the cloud and making sure that that maintenance is being supported, that it's noted in there, and that's why the question was asked, so thank you. As we move into the summaries of improvements resulting from the new FMIS, including but not limited to any reductions in processing times, increases in productivity, or savings in the expenditures caused by the prior use of the AS400. My question to that is, I have basic questions, but I want to make sure this hearing clearly communicates the improvements and advantages this new FMIS brings to our government and its vendors, and how this modernization and upgrade resolves issues we saw brought by the use of the AS400. So what improvements will be found when the government engages in procurement with the private sector and intra-government procurement? That's question A.
Well, the first reason for undertaking this, as I mentioned, is that this was a recommendation from our auditors. I believe it's also a recommendation from the public auditor that we modernize our systems. He mentioned, in connection with some other comments he's made, that it's hard to recruit the necessarily qualified people to run, in particular, the accounting system, which requires accounting training. We would certainly find it very, very hard to recruit people if we continue to use a system that they may have learned about in a history lesson, but certainly weren't trained upon when they attended their instruction wherever they might be at UOG or GCC, because such a system really doesn't exist in most places in the modern world. We've certainly found and demonstrated the ability to process things through the system much more quickly. That can be verified by the reduction in the backlog that I mentioned just now. I can tell you that when I get a payment to authorize, it comes up on my screen in a workflow. I can do it instead of having a piece of paper and losing track of the piece of paper and it only coming once a day. I can do it throughout the day, process those wherever I am. So it's certainly, as far as the final authorization is concerned, is quicker. I can see invoices moving through the system much more quickly. And now that we've got the issue with the requisitions resolved, they're moving through the systems much more quickly. And we actually showed you on that video how easy it is to verify timesheets, and that doesn't require, and GOA only has about 130 people in, but I got a stack of paper like this every other week for payroll. So it's ease of reference, when we get into the audit, because now when I get a payment request, there is the documents that support that payment request are attached to that request. That when the auditors ask for their sample, we can just give them that information, it's already there, instead of having to retrieve the paid check from a box or some other system that purported to contain this information. So ease of access, speed of process have all been, even with the novelty of the new system and people's lack of practice with it, we've already seen, especially in the accounting department and in the HR department, improvements in efficiency.
Thank you. What improvements can we expect in HR management, particularly with handling individuals on contracts and any salaried employees who may not be eligible for overtime? One chief concern I've had with the AS400 is some employees certify they worked only 40 hours a week when the actual truth is they worked nights and weekends as an unclassified employee ineligible for overtime. So,
unreported overtime should not occur. It is the policy of the administration that people should be paid for hours worked if they're non-exempt employees, they certainly should be paid for the overtime in accordance with our rules which follow federal guidelines. I think you may have noticed in the newspaper over the weekend that the US Department of Labor has decided not to increase the exemption limit for Guam and some of the other territories, at least for the moment, although it intends to increase the exemption limit for the mainland pretty quickly up to a fairly high figure before people are exempt from overtime payments. The system allows you to put in any time into the system, any clock time into the system, and it will record overtime if you're entitled to earn overtime during that period. The way we accumulate overtime is the federal way, so you have basically to work more than 40 hours in a week. Bless you, sir. 40 hours in a week. Sometimes that's kind of hard to know until you get to the end of the week. And again, the system is there to make sure that that accurate time is recorded. We did look at the very beginning about having a government-wide timekeeping system, but that was another expense too. And so we decided to rely upon timekeepers, and every agency has timekeepers to accurately report time.
thank you. What improvements do you see will occur when senators and our media partners request information that is housed in our FMIS?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
So, what improvements do you see will occur when senators and our media partners request information that is housed in our FMIS now?
Okay, so far as senators are concerned, the budget requires that senators have access to the old system. We, of course, will allow senators to have equal access in the new system, and this is a view-only system, so it will be the data warehouse that will be available to senators and OFB. In response to questions, retrieval is generally quicker. Depends, of course, upon the complexity of the request, and if it's a multiple period, multiple issue request, it's going to take time as any request would. But we no longer have to go and dig around in boxes and retrieve pieces of paper. So I do anticipate more faster responses to questions when they come.
Thank you very much, Ed, for answering a lot of the inquiries that I have posed. At this time, I'm going to yield to the leadership. I'll start with the speaker and then go to the Oversight Chair on Finance with Senator San Agustin, then Committee on Rules, and then work with those that came in after that. So, Madam Speaker, I will yield to you at this time.
Appreciate that, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for your presentation. I'm glad to meet some of you. And thanks to your team who worked very hard to implement this new system. Can you just clarify some things? You said there was an acting CPO, Chief Procurement Officer. What is the name?
It's Andy Kittigan. She's sitting behind there.
Okay, hello. Who? Say the name again, please.
Andy Kittigan. She's sitting over there.
Oh. Okay, I know her as Adriana, right? Okay, all right. And OTEC, what is your role in this FMIS new implementation?
Madam Speaker, our role really is assisting and supporting the Department of Administration in terms of not only their network infrastructure, but also in the access that they need to migrate the data from the old legacy systems to the newer one. But that we have a number of roles that are all in the background, but it's mostly infrastructure and not necessarily application based. So it's, things like the internet connectivity, security, credentials. OTEC is closely involved, and we work directly with the Performa team on any access issues.
What do you mean by access?
Well, everybody has to have credentials to access the training modules. And
Access to employees.
That's correct.
All right. So have there been any issues on your end between you and DOA?
Well, if there are issues, there's always going to be issues, so we work closely to resolve them quickly.
Or any of those issues the cause of the delays that we are seeing or not? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
I'm not aware of anything. We're generally working very, very close together. Anything that would cause delays, of course, we'd be on it.
Okay. So our systems are set. They were prepared for this transition, right? Access to the employees who needed it were already prepared and all of that. So that's not the issue, right? Mr. Welsh, I'm very happy that you're here. Thank you very much. You are representing Performa, who is contracted by Department of Administration. You're the representative of this company that we have contracted with to implement this program.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for answering our questions. I'll be honest though, Mr. Byrne, I'm very surprised why a contractor is here to answer questions that I believe should be answered by you. This is a matter of between you and the rest of the government of Guam and the people of Guam, and what is happening with you and your office. Oh, thank you.
For the record, I invited them.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So my understanding from today is that some of the issues we're facing is because some of the employees need more training, Mr. Byrne, and you're saying that, but that's not what I'm hearing from the agencies. They seem to report that it's DOA who's unable to make payments to vendors, unable to make the payroll deductions or even payroll for some of these agencies, and the invoices. So I just wanted to go over our timeline a little bit. So the auditor in his November 2023 audit stated that he said, it is a 5-year contract with a go-live date of January 8, 2024 for the core financial systems. But according to your professional contract agreement, you've already been contracted for over a year since January 2023, is that correct?
Yes?
Okay, so it's a 1-year kind of pre-work, and then go live was supposed to be January 2024. Well, that's according to the contract. And then the governor did announce also that they had gone live, and that was in March 5th when she did her State of the Island. She said we were on, we were proceeding, it was live. We had met, though, at Adelup on January 5th, and I remember you were very convincing, and I felt very assured because you had told us that you had already begun the training. This is in January 2024 when we were supposed to go live the next month, you said, or that maybe there was a delay and it would be the next month. But you said because the training had begun and the data was being inputted, and that we would not have issues because the AS400 would continue to run concurrently, alongside. And so, if there were any glitches, we would always be able to use the AS400 like we have been using to obtain the information. But then, and I think according to the contract, we're supposed to have financials, payroll, and human resources as part of this first release. That's what was announced in the newspaper. And then February 15, not too long after our meeting, we got our first letter from BBMR saying unable to submit the CRER reports for the month ending January as mandated. And he says, the government of Guam is currently transitioning from the AS400 to the new financial management information system, and access to the AS400 had been disabled since February 2, 2024. This is like 1 month after our meeting. And so he's saying he's not able to do his job because he can't get access to information. And then we got, another report in the newspaper, February 18, transition, delays, government revenue reports. Well, that's, I guess, the same thing. And then we got another one, March 11, same issue, delayed due to AS400 access being closed effective February 2. They were unable to give us the CRER for February. And then we just got it again in April 11th, earlier this month, from BBMR telling us unable to submit the CRER on time, delayed due to AS400 access being closed effectively. And so, I've listened and I've heard your explanation of all you have accomplished and all you will accomplish, but I'm just trying to figure out, what was the plan? And weren't all these things planned for in advance? And when we said we were going to transition financials, payroll, and human resources, it's kind of confusing. And then we end up with the change orders already, August 2023. That was 6 months into the contract. We had a change order, 98,000. Change to scope and defined work to replace the Department of Administration and DRT, Revenue and Taxation, POS system. And then another change order, a month later, additional effort to train end users and provide. This is all in October 2023, and 58,000 again November, again December, and again in January 2024, 1, 2, 3, 4 change orders for additional training. And I guess, that just goes back to maybe did we under contract for training? Did we under plan for the training that it would need to transition the information? You said you processed 30,000 invoices since February, but there are still 30,000 invoices to be processed. And that you had 1,200 requisitions returned. That's of the 30,000 that were processed. You also said you had 1,300 GG1s processed, and I'm going to ask you how many of those are pending, 1,300 out of how many? And so maybe we'll start there. How many of you've you said you processed 1,300 GG1, so that's a success, but how many are still pending or in the same period?
Madam Speaker, with your permission, I'll go back to the beginning. You asked a lot of questions along the way. May I go back to the beginning?
Well, I was
of what
just
you
stating my
said?
observations along the way, yes, and the chronology of this. So, yeah, my first question is, of the 1,300 GG1s processed, how many are still pending that were not processed? Or
Well,
is that all of them?
everything is being processed. Once the GG1 is initiated, it's in process. So the 1,300 includes everything that has come in, remember it's paperless, that has come in from an agency.
All right, so are there any delays in processing GG1s for the agencies? You're saying they should be reporting accomplished?
Yes.
All right. And then the 30,000 invoices that are still pending, you said some of these are delayed because the Chief Procurement Officer has to review them. I think that's what this spreadsheet showed us.
No, Madam Speaker, the Chief Procurement Officer doesn't review invoices.
It says,
That's reviewed by accounting.
all right,
And
these, sorry, that's HR. Here it is.
may I comment on
You said,
some of your
as part of
observations?
GSA workaround, the migrated requisitions were assigned to the ACPO. I thought that meant Acting Chief Procurement Officer.
Yeah, those aren't invoices.
Pardon?
Those aren't invoices. If I may, I'll ask the,
Therefore, the ACPO needs to complete her review and these through the system.
those are requisitions.
Okay.
And if I may, I'll ask the CFO to comment on the invoices. May I be permitted to comment on some of your observations?
Sure. If you could answer, please. Yeah.
I beg your pardon?
Yeah. She's going to answer about the requisitions are being treated differently than the invoices. Okay, yeah, sure. On the invoices then, you said the 30,000 had been processed, 30,000 are still pending.
Yes. The remaining invoices are, because the team are working through a backlog, so half of that 50,000 was migrated
Sorry,
from the,
we can't hear you.
half of that 50,000, I would say, were migrated from the old system, and a lot of those are last-minute invoice requests coming for the fiscal year 2023. So that we had to turn off the system for 1 week when we migrated to the data. So that the team weren't able to process anything until we turned on the system on February 12th, 13th, on Monday. So that's 1 week of no activity. The only payments that the team had to process were done manually. These are for travel, per diems, and anything that's urgently required for that week. So once we went live with the system, the team are still familiarizing themselves, navigating the new system. Of course, the training did not occur on real time. So they had to work through the different processes in the system, ensure the documentation are attached for the review by the director. Additionally, we also had an influx of payments coming from the systems that are not directly interfaced to the new system, which is your DPHSS volumes of invoices that sits in a different system. So that requires a manual upload, and then the team would have to review it and then upload it to the new system. So that also adds on to the delay. The team have worked overtime to try and get through the excess workload that was carried over. So this data does not include the work that was done on Friday and this past Saturday. So we expect 3/4 of this to be completely by this week, if not already. But that's really the cause. We had 1 week of not being able to use the system. At the same time, invoices are already coming through from the agencies. Additionally, when invoices are submitted, not all the documentation, not all the necessary approvals are provided. So we've had to go back to the agencies to provide the right documentation. With the director now reviewing everything online, there's multiple times that not all of those documents were not in line with his expectations. Again, making sure that we're paying the correct vendors in line with the right guidance from the right, the grants. So all of that, it's also an education piece with the agencies, where they used to be able to submit items through AS400. There was no additional due diligence because the system was doing all of that in the back end. Now, with everything interfaced manually, there's additional review that's being done, and it's been pushed back to the agencies to check. Some cases, they don't have sufficient funds in their accounts, appropriations were already utilized, and it's from one year to another. So there are multiple factors that contributed to the backlog and the delay in processing this. But the teams are really, we also have a small number of people working on getting these as well. So we haven't gotten into the stage of requesting for additional resources. We have a team in accounts payable alone only that process payments for the multiple agencies. There's only about 11 or 10 people in that team. And you're looking at more than, a lot of agencies that we process payments to. So those are also the data that we're looking at to be able to ensure that we are sufficiently resourced to process these payments online. So there's multiple factors, and including navigating a new system added to the delay. The same team also are responsible for processing vendor payments for payroll deductions, which took up a lot of the team's time to prioritize to make sure that our staff, our government employees that move over to the new system have, we've pushed those payments, because we've experienced, as you would have received, complaints on the delays in payroll vendor payments, which we've resolved as of last week. So
Those are resolved as of
yes,
last
as
month?
Of last,
okay.
Last week.
Is that for everyone who you've already processed, or for all, even the agency divisions that you were going to process in the future?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Great. All right, so that's vendor payable, payroll vendors, those are taken care of. And you're saying these invoices, it's a combination of these different things, but those were part of the plan. It was part of the plan that the system would go off for a week, and is that correct?
Correct.
And it was part of the plan that the director would now review these things anew from, and that's good.
Sorry, the workflow.
So what would you say to the agencies?
Could I just add, please, that a major feature of this system is workflow.
Yes.
So in order to get from one stage in the process to another, it has to have the right documentation or authorization to follow rules and regulations and statute. That wasn't present in the previous system, and there was shortcuts taken.
I appreciate
we don't want to do that.
So I appreciate that you're able to review everything now and all of that there is additional review. So what would you have us say to these agencies who call our offices and say, this delay is because of DOA? Would you say then that these invoice delays we're going to tell them that it's really either because your staff is not trained correctly or on review the documents were not submitted correctly, or is there a delay at DOA?
I am sure each circumstance may be different. DOA has a broad back. It's often blamed where the blame actually doesn't belong at DOA, unless you resolve the actual cause of the delay. I kind of made a joke over the weekend that the part of the body that we exercise most is finger pointing, right? It doesn't always solve the problem unless you go back.
Well, that's why we're trying to get to the facts. I'm sure that's why the chair called this hearing, because we want some facts to be able to say to them, yes, so there wasn't shut off for a week. These are being additionally scrutinized. But the system, is it going to be able to catch up? You said, and thank you for the overtime work to catch up on these invoices. Yes. Is the system going to catch up, and are we going to be able to move forward smoothly, or will there always be this kind of delay?
We're always making slight changes. We made a change at the end of last week where we separated out the mailboxes that each of these, because you now email invoices, into each type of invoice so that we can stream that within the accounting department.
All right, and the requisitions you said you wanted to talk about. So I was asking, so there's a 500, for example, 594 open requisitions. They have closed 234. There are 101 still pending in GSA. as part of the workaround, the requisitions were assigned to the acting chief procurement officer. She needs to complete a review and put these through the system. They're in review. Is this going to be the regular system? Is this causing the delay, or this is a regular part of the system that we're going to have to live with?
It's the same issue with backlog. Basically, the system, when it transferred over, allocated every requisition to GSA instead of the transitional ones, the ones that migrated from the old system. It didn't send it back to the agency. So GSA had to deal with an unusual, and they've been working overtime too, Madam Speaker. The GSA had to deal with these above and beyond their normal tasks. Now we're getting back to normal circumstances. Faulty requisitions or requisitions that don't match the requirements, the procurement requirements, because they're not sufficiently supported, or there isn't market research, or there's some other fault with them, will be sent back to the agency.
All right, I'm not going to ask because I think I know my other colleagues want to ask, and we need more time, but it is an issue because the new requisitions, there are 519, 432 are in review, 59 are closed, 27 were approved. That means the rest are either sent back or just not processed yet by GSA.
They're being processed or sent back. And you know, the good news is we know these numbers now. We really didn't know the numbers before because the procurement process was in two separate systems, and you had to keep on bouncing back and forth between the AS400 and the on-base system in order to determine how, pardon me, how procurement was processed.
All right, and why the change orders? Was that not part of the plan?
There's only one change order, well, there's actually two, but the major change order that was agreed was the original plan was for training either to be done internally or subcontracted to someone else. We determined, based upon the workload that we were getting and the fact that we didn't have every position filled, that it would be better for Performa to do the training, and they did a good job of it.
All right, what about the change order to the scope and define work to replace the DOA and DRT POS system?
That was a separate thing that we were looking at. I made mention of the issues we have with the revenue TPS system. We asked them to have a look and see, could that be incorporated either into phase 1 or phase 2, and we found out that we couldn't.
It could not?
It's too expensive.
Okay, and so that was never part of the plan?
No, it was never part of the plan.
It's never been part of the plan to incorporate the DRT data into the
No,
new
it
FMIS
wasn't.
system.
It wasn't, but we looked at it to see if it was feasible or not, and we determined, because of the major legacy issues, not to look at it, certainly for now, but to put it aside and consider whether the cost is worthwhile. And we haven't pursued it because we've been dealing with a workaround that is working.
Okay, so the change order was to study that?
To study that,
For the first time?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
and so what about public health integration? When is that going to happen? You said public health was the other system that's not compatible, federal grant.
It's in the AS400. It's never going to be integrated. We're just going to have a more, they say automatic, it's not a word that I like, automatic, a more routine way of posting the charges, so they don't have to be downloaded. At the moment, they have to be downloaded basically into Excel, and then the Excel spreadsheet is back uploaded into the new system.
So, yeah, the question is, was that part of the plan? You had already known about public health system. Did we not plan to include them in this new FMIS system then? It's just always going to be part of separate?
They didn't consult us when they initiated that system. They
that
just
was
went
years
ahead.
ago, right?
Yes, they just went ahead and did it.
But you knew about it when you entered into this contract and this RFP?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's,
so it was just part of the plan not to include them?
Yes.
All right. So you've 11 divisions, it said, on March 2023, 33 divisions on April 6th, where the payroll has been migrated to the new payroll system. But there is a significant other number of divisions, and these are all on hold pending resolving data transfer issues identified in first two sets of rollout. And this is data from the AS400. Are these resolved or not? I mean, the data transfer issues resolved?
So the solution was identified last week, so we anticipate to do more tests this week before we can confirm implementing and rolling out the payroll to the rest of the agencies.
All right. And so this is not a matter of, what is the resolution? Who's going to implement that?
The solution was, the issue was the data that comes from, for payroll deductions, that comes from the payroll system. When it reaches the accounting system to make the payments to the vendors, there was an issue with the data. Some of the columns were not correctly read by the other system. So the team, the support team have had to reconcile and make sure when the formatting, when it comes across, can, both systems can read each other's work per se.
Okay.
So that was identified as a root cause of what delayed the payroll vendor payments, the last two payrolls.
All right, so are these, after your testing, will the hold be released and you're going to start integrating all the rest of the divisions?
Correct,
Okay.
per the schedule, yes.
All right.
So we're progressively migrating because of the volumes to make sure that we're catering.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, CFO. And Mr. Burns, so the AS400, what is the status of that system? Is it going to stay with us, or are we going to pay both contracts?
That's a question perhaps you would direct to Mr. Lujan. I demonstrated to you that as far as DOA is concerned, it's only taking information that comes from that system for legacy reasons. We're not I think since we've migrated all the data from the AS400 into our new system, we don't access it. We're only accessing that interface that we described. So if you have a question as to what the future of this is, perhaps you'd direct that to Mr. Lujan.
Okay, please. Yeah.
Madam
Mr.
Speaker,
Lujan.
just
Sorry,
to
I didn't hear him.
Just to complete or answer your question regarding the AS400, currently the AS400 has 4 major production systems. Of course, one of them is the financial management system. The other core systems include DRT's system and public health. The last one is Department of Corrections. And the Department of Corrections actually will be phasing or or sunsetting their systems probably within the next few months. So we're in the process of implementing a new cloud system that would migrate them off. But for as far as the AS400, today it's called the IBM Power I. And it is what's called the Power 7 platform. The newest platform is Power 10. And we'll be upgrading that to actually meet the workloads that are still being presented by DRT and public health. And the other key reason for the upgrade is actually cybersecurity piece, because the platform itself has been in place since 2014. That's well over 10 years. It is an audit exposure for us, so we're moving to at least upgrade the hardware so it's current and secure. But on the DOA side, there's 2 major applications that are still running concurrent as we move forward. Parts of the payroll system is still in production, as well as the transaction point of sale system for DOA and DRT. Those are on the financial partition. So it will remain in production at least for the next 3 to 5 years.
Are we scaling down then? What, we're in a contract? We're paying on that?
On the,
AS400?
well, there's multiple contracts. There's support contracts for the DRT systems.
Right, so,
There's also support contracts for the public health systems. On the hardware itself, it's actually end of life in terms of maintenance, so we're having a difficult time even trying to keep some of the hardware components intact and funded on the maintenance side. It is at end of life, so that's why we made the decision to start the upgrades. Once we go into upgrade mode, it will be in at least a 3 to 5 year warranty, so we won't have any costs other than on the maintenance side until after that 5 years.
so just clarify, what we've been paying for the AS400, we are going to continue to be paying or more?
Well, on the platforms, again, there's the software that's running on the different partitions.
Just, I'm
Yes.
trying to, yes?
Yes.
And then that means that transitioning to this new system is just on top of all of that, this 30 million.
Well, transitioning to the new system actually transforms the workflows, so it's much more efficient. But, and eventually the goal is to move most of the financial management systems off.
Part of the reason we were transitioning was because we didn't own the data on the AS400 apparently. What about the public health and the DRT? Is that
Actually, I
within
think
your
that's
control?
a fallacy. We always have owned the data on the AS400. We may not own the code, but we actually own the data. All the data is still owned by the government.
Okay, because that was part of the presentation, I think. All right, thank you. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I know others are anxious to ask questions.
You're very welcome, Speaker. Senator Joseph Augustine, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just heard you break down the costs. What's the cost in terms of software for the cloud versus hardware? It would be you, Mr. Law.
I don't have exactly the exact cost, but there is a cost still on the hosting side. The only difference between cloud-based systems and something on the on-prem side is the capital investment that we'd have to do for the hardware for on-premise systems.
I'm only asking that because the budget is coming up, so you need to get to it real soon. Mr. Byrne, how much debate have you gotten from all the agencies as you're trying to migrate all the data into the new system? How much hesitation have you gotten from the agencies? Because I hear that there's some information they're not helping you out. If you have to get a request and then you have to send it back saying, you need to put your approval, you need to do this, that means somebody's not reading the book or they just ignore it and they just want to stay with the old system. They're so used to the AS400 that they don't want to change. And there's a new system in place.
Yeah, changes.
And I just want to make sure.
Yes, thank you for that question, Senator. Changes is always, not to everyone, but to many people, change is uncomfortable. We're asking people to do things in a different way because we've got into bad habits. As I mentioned to the Speaker, some shortcuts were taken in processes which shouldn't have been taken. When they do, and they come up in compliance reports, obviously we would be at fault if we see something and we don't attempt to make sure that the process is fully compliant. So we built that into the workflows within the new system. Some agencies kind of were surprised, I guess, that, all of a sudden, that shortcut that we've been able to take for the last 10 years, we can't take anymore. So we've had to go back to them and say, send us the right information. You're asking for this, but you didn't give us the supporting documentation. On procurement, you're asking for this, but you didn't follow the procurement rules. and now it's in the workflow, you have to basically check off that process before you move to the next one. I wouldn't like, to think necessarily every agency is totally resistive to this, because we've had actually a lot of very favorable comments from some agencies, and more importantly, some favorable comments from some of our outside vendors who are getting the information, and yes, they're getting the payments much more speedily than they did under the old system. When you make a payment to someone, they need to know what you're paying and why. And that information is in fact getting to them much more quickly. So yes, there is some resistance to change. There always will be. I don't think that everyone is always comfortable, like I kind of outlined in my opening remarks. Not everybody is comfortable with change. All this process was put in to improve the accounting and procurement and recruitment processes, not only in process, but in compliance too. So we encourage all agencies to look at what they're doing to make sure that their directors, their ASOs, and their responsible staff know what they're doing and why.
Okay. I noticed on that one page, the payments to GovGuam paid to Performa to date. Where are we at? I'm looking at that page. It says total paid to date is 11 million. Total owed per contract is 11 million. I just want to make sure that I'm reading it correctly. It's almost like you just moved the numbers to the right. Whatever's on the left, move to the right. Is that correct? We paid 11, we owe them 11 more.
So, sir, per the contract, as of year to date, we're supposed to have paid Performa 11.9 million. We've paid 11.8. They haven't charged us of the other items that were in the list. Although there are change requests included in that whole total, that's what we've so far paid Performa.
Okay, and we're going to thank Brian Welch that they're not going to charge us. And Mr. Welch probably saying, no, you got charges coming your way. Thank you for being here anyway, Mr. Welch. But how many years is this supposed to be, this contract? For
5 years.
It's 5 years. So we're saying in 5 years, everything will be wrapped up, or hopefully by the end of this year, we're pretty much so based on whatever happens to maintain maintain the system is working correctly?
Yes, we're kind of ahead of schedule because, as Mr. Welsh mentioned, that we're going to introduce the federal grants module kind of 6 to 9 months, is it? 6 to 9 months ahead of the original schedule.
Okay. No, the reason why I'm trying to lead on to more questions, but I can save it for later. I'm just concerned that when we do the audits and stuff, I want to make sure that the system is able to give the information they need to the OPA. I don't want to hear we're waiting for FMI, the system to produce. It's needed to produce just a little bit faster, because I'm looking at your page here where it talks about training. 80%, 100%, I'm like...
Well, in respect of the fiscal 23 audit, Senator, we've already given the information to the auditors, so they've started the audit based upon the information that came out of us blending the accounting information from the old and new systems.
Okay, I'm looking at your status of training. You got 95, 82, one is data warehouse, 40%? Why only 40? The data warehouse. It's on...
So, Senator Brian Welch from Forma. So the data warehouse was is a reporting tool for the system. So keep in mind you have a budget system, an HR system, a payroll system, accounting system, 4 different systems. All the data of those systems are pulled into one data warehouse for reporting. Our plan all along was to implement the data warehouse at 1.0 with all the historic data out of the AS400. So we'd pull 4 or 5 years, whatever it was, per module into the data warehouse. We'd pull that in and we would report off of that. That was the first use of it. Then as a part of 1.1 and 1.2, we'd pull more data in transactional data from the systems, and then those users would be trained. So the 40% of the overall users is what's going to eventually be the data warehouse user group, which are not currently all users because all the data is not currently in the data warehouse. So the 40% is misleading. It's 40% of the users that will eventually need to use the data warehouse.
Okay, and that's why I was looking at your numbers here, and I'm like, something don't sound right. You can't have a bunch of 100% and 80, 82, 80% the lowest, and then you got 40. It's referring to the whole picture. It's not just this one part. Okay.
That is correct.
Good. Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, I want to ask a whole bunch, but I want to save this as we move along. Because you also identified, Ms. Burns, that is it in the budget request for additional funds to pay Performa, or we're going to get a discount this year? I just thought I'd throw it out. Yeah.
Of course, it's up to us to negotiate as keenly as we should, but the contracted amount that we expect to pay in fiscal 25 is in the budget. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll ask offline with Mr. Burns. Thank you.
Senator Sean Augustine. Senator Chris Barnett, I will address you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And good morning to the panel present. Thank you for your attendance this morning. I guess I too would like to start with some observations. And I think my first one is just getting a lot of text from employees of DOA and GSA, and the characterization that they're making of this hearing is that it seems like we're throwing the employees and the agencies under the bus. And you just got done, Mr. Byrne, talking about some of the processes being delayed because you're not getting accurate information from the agency directors. But I received a message from an agency director who, I'm going to get a load of this, chooses to remain anonymous, and the comment was, performance evaluations aren't able to be completed for employees given the system says errors. As for paying vendors, we are told they are being paid via direct payments. The HR component of the FMIS continues to have glitches delaying HR processing between the agencies and DOA. And I guess I wanted to kind of first start with, because I met with the Deputy Director of the Department of Public Works last week, and she had informed me that issues with the financial management system may be close to jeopardizing some of their procurements. And I saw in your documents you said a lot of things about paperless, but maybe you could just start by explaining what's the status of DPW and vendor payments being made? Are those being made directly? Are we having to issue paper checks? And are we in danger of losing any or violating any of the contracts because of delays?
We made 2 very large payments on Friday under the federal highway contracts. I don't know what she's referring to, but ask her to come and see me about what she's referring to, and we will take care of it.
Also, what's the status of employee deductions? I'm hearing that just from some of the employees that were behind 2 pay periods. Is that accurate?
Oh, the CFO talked about that at some length. Maybe I could ask her to repeat it.
Sir, so since the implementation of the new payroll system, we've migrated over 2 sets of groups. The first group was DOA, and the first pay period that they were on the new payroll system was the last pay period of March. Whilst the salaries were successfully processed, there were delays with the payroll deductions. These were due to issues with the transfer of payroll deductions data and their payroll vendors from the payroll system to the new payroll system to the new accounting system. As of April 22nd, those were rectified, and the payroll deductions for that pay period were remitted to the vendors. The next set of agencies that moved across to the new system included 33 division agencies. Again, the salaries were successfully processed. However, the payroll deductions were also delayed due to data reconciliations between the 2 systems. And as of last Friday, those deductions were remitted, and we've identified the issue. So we're working to resolve those before we move the next set of agencies to the new payroll system. Currently, we still have 2 payroll systems running concurrently when it's payroll time, That is the new payroll system and the AS400 payroll system. So until we resolve the issue, we will push through with the remaining division agencies.
Thank you, ma'am. I was able to obtain an email, I believe that you wrote, and it discusses some of these issues with the payroll deductions. And I'll just read from the body of it. We need to please resolve this today. It's been weeks of chasing and follow-ups since the EHR payroll went live. Accounting and payroll are bombarded with employees' follow-ups, and we're also responding to a FOIA relating to these delays, not to mention a public hearing scheduled next Monday regarding the status of the financial management system overall. A fix to resolve this issue with payroll vendor deductions generated in EHR payroll system needs to be addressed as a matter of high priority and urgency.
That was a message that I sent to the Performa team last week, Monday, as we were trying to resolve the issue with the payroll. And so as a result of bringing that and escalating that, we got the immediate response and got the right teams to address the issue.
Okay, and is this going to be an issue moving forward? Because I've just heard from employees that, you know, there are voluntary and involuntary deductions that they had issues with.
Yeah. So we identified the issue last week. So last Friday for the most recent payroll, that the work is already in progress to make sure that we get the right data over to the new system before we push out the payments. The payroll deductions for last pay period are due, the due date is Wednesday this week to the payroll vendors. So we're on track to get these pushed out by tomorrow at the latest to get to the banks.
Is there an issue with notices of personnel actions being processed?
Those are the GG1s. No. The issues with bonuses, as I wrote to Senator Blas, is not to do with the system.
I was in receipt of information from, again, some of the agency employees, and this was relative to promotions. And I'm just not sure if this was a glitch in the system, but employees had reported to me that the director of DOA and then I believe another director of BBMR had also been processed for these promotions. I was further informed that the director of BBMR asked that his promotion not be processed, but I'm looking at, and I know you're familiar with this GG1 here that processes a promotion for yourself and increase it to your salary of $10,000. Is this accurate?
Yes.
Okay. So there's no issues with promotions in the system?
No.
Okay. And what did you get promoted to?
It's a promotion from one EW to EX, or I think it's EW to EX. I didn't bring that sheet with me.
Are you able to clarify what types of promotions or increases in pay you've received since the beginning of January 23?
Could you repeat that question, please?
How many other promotions and increases have you received in the last couple of years?
Have I?
Yeah.
There was one like 2 years ago. Is it 2 years ago?
Is that when your pay went from $102,000 to $120,000?
$21,000.
Okay.
Yes.
So you've received $30,000 in promotions, increases in pay in the last 2 years?
I haven't received it yet, because it's just happened.
Okay. Just checking for the record. What about federal funding, federal contracts, procurements? Have there been any federal funding that has been lost due to delays or issues with the processing of the new financial management system?
No.
I don't need to remind you you're under oath, right?
I am not aware of any funding lost as a result of the financial management system. There may be other reasons.
So you had, Mr. Welsh had said that we were on track, or I think that might have been Ms. Teresa, to get the federal module implemented by October of 24. Is that correct?
The federal grants module, yes, it's right now in the design phase. We're working with the team to design the solution.
These change orders here totaling 331,940. Mr. Brenner, are we anticipating any other increase costs to this $31 million contract?
Not at this moment, no.
Can you provide more detail about your comments relative to law enforcement officers and processing of time cards and how, I think you had said most of those are still under the AS400?
Yes. For law enforcement, in particular for GFD and GPD, they do not generally comply with an 80-hour pay period. For GFD has a 106-hour pay period. It became very evident when we started to discuss this with those departments that their timekeepers were struggling with the concept of not having a standard time week and the system, the changes they needed to make to get there. As was said on some other context, once you set up someone's timesheet in the system, you can just copy it from week to week if no changes are made in their working pattern. But it became very clear that those timekeepers were very uncomfortable with moving very quickly to this new process. So we decided that we were going to process all the agencies that have standard times first, and then move to the ones that have these differing pay patterns.
And so what's the status of eventually migrating that over to the new system? Because it kind of sounds like what's happening here is we have the old system, which is automated, and the new system, which just from what I'm gleaning from all these comments, it's kind of seeming like a manual system with all the inputting that we're trying to do. And then you had said that we're going to continue under the AS400 for the next few years. So basically we're running two financial management systems.
Can I just pick up the first thing you said? Sure. The schedule is that we would move to the last agency under the new system on August 10th. We're not going to go years. We, with the cooperation of the agencies, and I hope that I can rely upon you to help support that these agencies will move to the new system by August the 10th, or maybe we've got a week delay, but that's certainly our goal. With respect to your comment about the systems, I mentioned several times before that the new system is paperless. The old system requires
but Mr.
piles
Byrne,
and piles
you
of
say it's
paper.
paperless, but we're hearing that, we had to cut paper checks for the foster kids. We're hearing that, that's kind of happening a lot, so.
May I finish what I was saying?
I'm just not sure how paperless it is.
May I finish what I was saying with respect to the payroll? Then I'll get on to the checks. Okay. So there is no need any longer to have paper timesheets. That's more automatic than having someone on an Excel system fill out a timesheet and then have someone put line by line that into the AS400 system. So I wouldn't agree with your characterization. With respect to the checks that went to, and I think that's no longer the case, but I'll have the CFO confirm that. When we first started out, there were some issues we had with the EFT information. So in order to get people paid, we cut them checks. Now we're back onto an EFT system. But we took that step to pay them. Wouldn't you rather they got paid than they didn't?
That's an interesting question, Mr. Byrne. Mr. Luan, maybe you could clarify a little bit more because about the AS400 system. So I took your comments on the record, basically that Rev and Tax and Public Health are going to remain on this system. Is that correct?
That's correct at this time. There probably is a vision to eventually move off, but that's still in the vision and the planning stages.
So we are going to be running 2 financial management systems.
No, not necessarily. The DOA's financial system, they're on track to actually move off of the logical partition that they're populating today. So they will eventually no longer be on that system. But the other systems will still be there until there's a plan to move off. The other systems meaning PH Pro for Public Health, which of course runs the largest agency, and Department of Revenue and Taxation. Examples of applications that run on the AS400 include the business privilege tax through GRT, many of their insurance applications, and to date, including the driver's license and motor vehicle. Those are all major applications that remain on the AS400.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get to is, so what payments are we making to the old vendor under the AS400? And have we made any, or are we in arrears? And how much is this, what you just described, is this going to stay the same cost moving forward, or are we anticipating any increases?
Well, unfortunately, I don't have that data. Most of those costs, DRT bears the cost for their applications as well as public health. On the DOE side, they have their own costs. So in the past, most of them have always been separated, except for when the Office of Technology became a department, we actually inherited the old Firm 400 software application in terms of its payment, and that's now going back to DOA.
Mr. Byrne, do you have any information on that?
With respect to payments for the AS400?
The old system, and then moving forward, what the cost would be?
We haven't paid any payments for the AS400 system. We have not.
How are you maintaining it then?
Way back, like 4 years ago, we attempted to renegotiate the maintenance contract, and we failed. So we discontinued the maintenance contract.
Do we owe them money then?
In respect to that, no.
And has that led to, I mean, I'm thinking that's probably led to complications if you don't have the vendor looking at the system and assisting you with the transfer or the migration, has it?
No. The migration has all come from Performer and their staff.
Ms. Teresa, in your email, just the tone of it kind of, to me, implied that you've been having issues with the vendor and some of these delays. I'm again just reading between the lines. Is that accurate?
That was more of it's been a challenging 2 months, working and supporting the team. And so it wasn't necessarily, it was both teams trying to be clear on what the issues were. Yes, we've had challenges, and there has been some frustration, but it's not to say that we weren't able to work together. It's trying to get to, we have various groups of support teams. There's a different payroll system team. There's a different accounting system team, and trying to bring the teams together, and also us, our team, providing the right the information to try and work through. Yes, to be fair, it has been a challenge, and I speak for the team. It has been a challenge, but as in any system migration, we do come across those, and trying to build the team's engagement helps a lot, and trying to get them to see we will see the end of the light at the end of the tunnel. But yeah, it has been a challenge, I must say that, but we're working through it collaboratively.
I appreciate your honesty, ma'am, because just hearing what's coming from the panel and measuring it against what I'm hearing from the employees, I'm not even sure if you guys are using the same system they are, because, the complaints have been the delays, the additional costs. I mean, some of these employees are telling me, Senator, we paid $31 million. We're going to pay $31 million for the system, and we're footing out additional costs for things that I mean, I don't know, I'm not a systems analyst, but things that I feel should have been included, you know, in the original cost of the contract. And then I get things like, there's all these issues with processing all this paperwork, but we didn't have an issue with processing Mr. Burns' promotion, $10,000 increase in pay. So I appreciate your honesty, and I think that this is something that, you know, as we get further into the weeds on, I mean, time will tell, you know, I mean, I understand the need to migrate to the new system, but, you know, knowing that this vendor has essentially been paid since January of last year, it's frustrating, you know, we're talking about employees not receiving the training. Well, who's responsible for holding the trainings and organizing the trainings, right? It's not the employees, I don't think. Just a question with GSA. So you're basically saying that we're behind on processing. Are you, again, blaming the respective agencies? Has this got anything at all to do with the financial management system?
Well, I think I answered that question already a couple of times before, it's a mixture, as you can see, in those statistics. That's why we included those statistics. But the backlog was in the old system. I described that the old system was actually two systems. It was the AS400 system and it was the on-base system. That clearly wasn't an efficient way of going forward. So I don't know what issues you thought we had with GSA.
Well, I'm just getting...
They also are working really, really hard.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the backlog I'm hearing about. I mean, I'm hearing... And maybe it would be nice if we could get the acting chief procurement officer up here to maybe clarify the record for herself. But yeah, I'm just hearing that we're delayed as far back as September 2023. And then I'm also hearing that it's because we've just got a couple people working on this process, and Ms. Teresa had said that you haven't yet made the call for additional resources, additional personnel, and that's frustrating because every time we get these agencies in here, they're talking about procurement delays. We're blaming other entities for these delays, and it kind of looks like the fault is sitting squarely on our lap, especially if you're not taking the initiative to get extra help for this processing.
We have. We're trying to recruit people into GSA. Wasn't a very popular position for people to apply to. We are beginning to get some real interest in people, and I believe we have, we've already tried to recruit 2 buyers. We're trying to recruit a 3rd.
1 buyer?
2 buyers plus a 3rd.
Oh, okay. Well, let me just sort through that, Madam Chair. I know my other colleagues have a lot of questions as well, but I also want to commend the Chair for conducting this hearing. I sent you a FOIA. I haven't received a response, but a lot of the information that I was asking for is contained in these documents.
I believe it's due today.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Barnett. And I think one of the questions I probably want you guys to dwell upon again is just the confusion and making sure that I better understand it is, you know, working the old system versus the new system, what is old, what is still on the old system, and the contract from the vendor that is owed. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So you don't have to answer that right now. Maybe right before I do the closing, I'll yield back to the 2 of you. I just want to make sure I heard it right because Ed, you said you haven't paid, or you haven't paid anything to the old system, and I'm just finding it a little confusing that there's people, we still have the old system that hasn't been terminated yet. So just food for thought. Senator Brown, you are acknowledged at this time. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It's been interesting going through this maze this morning of trying to understand this whole process and come up with some awareness of what's going on. I'm sure the public is probably just as confused. You know, I think we can anticipate, and I'm no systems expert, but I understand we can anticipate challenges in transferring from one system to another. But it almost sounds, how prepared were we to actually implement it? if it's something that's not just left with, obviously, Mr. Burns, your department at DOA, but something that requires a collective engagement of other department and agencies. And, I often recognize, you guys have cabinet meetings, you're able to engage with your fellow directors and anticipate or plan, what needs to be prepared for, because it sounds like we're learning as we go along. And I am concerned if we are running two systems, why and for how long, and how much are we anticipating to pay for both systems? Because at the end of the day, if it's going to end up costing people more, what are we accomplishing and how much more effective is it? And certainly we have frustration, obviously, in hearing the inability in a timely manner to process payment. And was that anticipated? And if it was anticipated, what was being put in place to address it so we didn't have situations where either employees or in the case, and maybe it's public health's fault, I don't know, but when we had the hearing with regards to the foster children, that payments were delayed. Why were they delayed? Did it have anything to do with the new system? Whatever the case may be, I mean, if things are not getting processed in a timely fashion as expected, then the challenge is there, and the recipients that anticipate that payment, obviously, are going to be frustrated. So I'm confused about all this. I really am, because I assume there's got to be, you have a plan, a layout, an anticipation of when things are going to be put in place. When are the remaining components that are not in this system yet? When will they be in place? And how are you addressing the issue with the existing company that we've been dealing with for a long time in the transfer of this data? Because I attend many hearings. This one is not as clear-cut to me in terms of what the objective is, how soon it's going to be done, and if there are change orders, I kind of expressed that concern, as my other colleagues have here. What is it for? Wasn't it part of the contract? Was it anticipated? Money going out, and yet we're still, doesn't sound like we're in a better situation from the consumer standpoint.
We are. This is the fourth time in my career that I put in a new system. And in my experience, I'm a great believer in the Greek tragedy, pathemethos. You learn by experience. This is by far the smoothest process that I have ever experienced. And I started my career 52 years ago. As far as making these payments that you were asking about, yes, we did have some problems at the very beginning. In the first week, although you're right, cooperation from everybody is essential. And although we asked people to put what they needed, knowing that we were going to transfer to the new system, although we asked them to put information into the system timely before we made the transfer, some of them did, some of them didn't, some of them just didn't have the ability to do so. So the very first batch of foster payments, which I think is the one you're referring to, we had to pay by check because of the issues that I mentioned before with the EFT system. That isn't the case now. Foster payments are going out timely. Every other public health payment is going out timely. We made 3 ERA payments last week. We made 2, as I mentioned, major highway payments last week. I look every day because I go through all the payments, at the number of payments we make, and fortunately it's decreased. I think one day we made 42 individual payments. For the last few days, it was 20, and on Friday, although there were large numbers, it went down to 16. This morning, I already authorized 3 payments before I left. So payments are going through. I hope you're hearing that. I hope that those people who previously were complaining now can acknowledge that these payments are in fact being made and being made timely. And the backlog that we referred to was the old system's backlog, not the new system's backlog. Our statistics that we produced earlier demonstrate that we reduced the backlog that was in the old
Well,
system.
I think moving forward, if that's the case, I think it's wonderful. It's just, I don't know if there was not enough outreach from DOA to relay to the public or those that were adversely impacted that this is going to be anticipated. Was it anticipated? Was that information relayed to, even to the department and agencies, that if they didn't get their information in a timely fashion, that they may expect delays in payment?
Yes.
And what collective effort was done within your, I mean, you know, I hear directors come in here and tell us how this and that was not connected within the government of Guam. And yet, you know, you have fellow cabinet members that are part of this administration that I'm assuming should be responsive to ensure that their department or agency is providing what they're supposed to provide. Is that not the case? I've been in a couple of administrations. I mean, you know, when they say get this done, yeah, you don't ask when or how. You're anticipating it's going to be completed, especially if it's a collective effort that's required, because there are consequences to those that are going to be at the short end for whatever reason, that there's going to be delay in payment or processing.
Well, if you're asking, you know, what other agency directors do, respectfully, you have to ask them. We communicate what we can. Everybody is aware, and indeed, my deputy and I are in receipt of calls and emails every day asking us to help them because somebody previously either failed or made an error, or sometimes forced, sometimes unforced, in a process, and we do our best to help them complete that process. We don't say to them, we're not going to do it. We don't say to them, you made the mistake, you fix it. We try and look beyond that and help them to make a payment that either they overlooked. We deal with a recruitment issue that they overlooked. We try and help. And that's the cooperation that we try and make. We would hope that other agency directors cooperate in the same manner.
Well, I'm just going to note the disconnect because, as I mentioned, there's a centralized system of decision-making within a government, and the administration has that with the governor and the lieutenant governor and their cabinet. And I don't know, we had regular cabinet meetings, and you know, if there was a directive that was issued, there was performance that was expected. If there was something that needed to be done, there was a timeline, a deadline, then we were all expected to fall in line with that, especially if it came from the front office. Well, I don't know. It just comes out disconnected to me in terms of something that we would look at as critical and something that was touted to somehow be the solution for us moving forward, that this is going to be the best thing since sliced bread. Where are we then? I'm a little concerned about the fact we still have the existing old system, and I don't get a gauge that there's a timeline put in place as to when we're going to phase out the old system. If we have it, and we're saying this new system is going to be the greatest solution moving forward, what is the timeline to phase out, especially if there is no maintenance contract? And I don't know if the existing company cannot provide access to this information if we've not paid any maintenance contract for a few years to them for the data that they have. Where are we with that?
Could you repeat that question? I think Mr. Lujan answered the question about how long the AS400 system was likely to be needed to be in existence, and I believe his answer was 3 to 5 years.
And why is it going to take so long, 3 to 5 years, to transfer if this, you know, new system's just going to absorb all this? And then how much are we paying? Because now we're going through a transition process of having to pay 2 companies? Don't we get a discount?
Not for the financial system.
Well, where are we with the data? I mean, what else does the old system cover that's going to take 3 to 5 years? What is not included now with regards to?
As we previously said, again, we are transferring bit by bit the payroll system from the legacy system to the new system.
And it's going to take 3 to 5 years to do that, or no?
That, as I answered previously, is scheduled to be complete by August 10th.
Okay.
There are other processes being done in the old system, including public health and DRT, and which they decided years ago should be done in that old system. The information that comes from that has to be put into the new system. So I spoke about the revenue system, which we didn't anticipate at the beginning of this because it was a huge undertaking on top of another huge undertaking. We weren't going to move the revenue system from the old system to the new system, except we decided, oh, maybe we need to have a study to see whether it's worthwhile adding it to the contract. And we had a change order to do that, and we determined that we wouldn't add it to the contract at this time because it was such a major undertaking. So that revenue system is still in the old system. We would like, and we have, I have often said to the directors of DRT, we would prefer you to move your system, your revenue system, to align with our new system. And we're still talking to them, and I still hope that can happen.
So what are we addressing in the new system? Just the processing of procurement and payroll? Is that what it comes down to?
I'm sorry?
What are we doing with the new system? Are we just addressing the processing of payroll and procurement?
No, it's the whole financial management system. Maybe you missed the presentation, but the whole budgeting system, the
Mr.
financial
Director,
reporting system.
I hope you keep reiterating your comments that this has been mentioned. Maybe I've missed it. If you need to reiterate it, then simply reiterate it.
It was in the presentation, it was in the video.
Yes, in the presentation, it sounds wonderful. Presentations are wonderful, but that's the point of engagement, of being able to ask questions. If I have something I'm not clear about, then I get to ask the question again and again if I choose to. I simply ask you to respond to it, nothing more, nothing less than that.
I think it's reasonable for me to point out if I feel I've already answered the question.
Well,
but
then
let
you
me
get...
take a step back and try and answer your question, is that in the new system, as the video said, is the accounting system, the basic accounting system, the budgeting system, we're going to have the federal grant system, payroll system, HR, and procurement. All that is in the new system.
But it's not a complete system, obviously, then, of these key components of goodness of all things, revenue generating, which we would think would be even more critical rather than just what we're paying out, but hopefully what we're supposedly taking in as a government would be included. And that's kind of surprising that that's not the case. I mean, if you're telling me it's going to take another 3 to 5 years to do that, then this is not... This is going to be a very time-consuming process. I'm assuming more change orders and more costs are going to be adding on. And then what are we paying the current company now, annually, for what is left that they're still having to carry? Or is that a total separate company from what's been operating the AF400?
DOA is not paying anything.
Okay, so is this data you already own then, and it's not something you have to pay for? I mean, who's carrying it? It's just sitting there in space? Where is it?
Mr. Lujan already said that the data, we own the data.
And you already have it. You have it, and it's not going to disappear.
The data that's in our systems today, the government owns the data. We may not own the code, but we actually own the data.
Okay, and if you don't own the code, then what? Could they not give you the code? What does it mean? Put it in Fino English so we can understand it, and the rest of the general public. I mean, you might be entertaining to yourself, but I think we've got every right to try to wade through all of this, because I don't know collectively if all my other colleagues do. I don't have a clear understanding, and I might not be the sharpest light here, but I think I have a good general understanding of the English language and the questions that I have on behalf of the public that we all represent on this side of the aisle. And it's not that clear. I'm sorry. I've been at this a long time. I've sat through probably thousands of hearings in that time frame. And this one's just a little more confusing to me with something that probably we want clarity to.
I agree, and I'm not sure if I can add more clarity, but I can start out with, first of all, it's the systems that we engage in over at OTEC, they're very complex. They're not that specific or clear. I think over the years, there's the fallacy that the AS400 just ran the financial management system, and the reality is no, it doesn't. It runs literally the rest of the government, and it includes revenue and taxation and all their applications, as well as public health and all their respective applications, which includes things as simple as the SNAP, all the benefits, the claims for Medicare and Medicaid, all that integration, all the health licensing, that is all still in the AS400. That is not in the DOA financial management system, but they're all in the AS400 today.
So who's maintaining their system? Is Reventex maintaining their own system?
That's
for
correct.
all the new data going in? Is the same thing
No,
for public
they're-
health? Who's actually maintaining the system?
Reventex has their vendors that maintain their systems.
Okay.
And public health has their vendors that maintain their systems. They may be the same or multiple vendors. It just really depends on the circumstances and the applications that they procure, but they all are still running a production environment in the AS400, and there is no plan to phase them out anytime soon. However, the financial management system, that is on the way of being sunsetted. I'll use the word sunsetted, and we've made significant progress in migrating the data to the new cloud-based system under Microsoft. So those are significant strides, but it is a very, very complex task overall. And as a result, you'll see things like delays in training and just the complications with payroll, as Director Byrne explained. But we're still tracking against sunsetting most of those applications, if not all, on the financial side of the AS400 before the end of the year.
And would that affect, because you're telling me they have a separate system, would that affect the Reventex or public health?
Well, the interfaces going into the AS400 or going into the new financial management system, as the director presented, they're working on the interfaces to those systems. That's an ongoing process with the vendor. So they're working on.
And does that phase out the current vendors that they have if they transfer this to this new system? Does that phase out all these different vendors that they may be working with now?
No, not necessarily. This is really just building the interface where these systems are talking to each other.
Interesting. I guess maybe in time it'll all settle. I don't know that we're settled on this side with the information being provided, and I'm sure the public probably may be just as confused with our trying to comprehend what's going on here. And what exactly are we getting with all of this? Because it's making it sound like we've got a more updated, modernized system. Then what happens when the time comes, and what's the length of this contract, this current contract, this new contract that's in place? How many years is this going to serve us? Because goodness, if we have to go through this process to transfer to a new system of technology down the road, it'll be just as confusing.
It's a 5-year contract. I hope we don't have to wait another 34 years to move to another system if the technology pushes us that way. Mr. Welsh explained about the system of point releases, and throughout the 5 years, there are a system of point releases to bring the system basically up to date. And we also discussed the possibility of a maintenance contract after the 5-year contract has expired. And then that may also include the ability to have additional releases if we have to do something because of a GASB mandate, or we have to do something differently because government reporting standards have changed. We obviously need to be up to date. GASB is actually reviewing the whole way that government accounts and financial statements are presented. And we will have to keep up with that just as any other government within the United States.
Well, it sounds that by the 5 years, if we're still working with Rev and Tax and Public Health, I mean, the time is going to expire before that process is completed. I just think it's something we definitely, Madam Chair, need to keep a handle on because it's a bit confusing. I mean, of course, not all of us are tech savvy, otherwise we'd be earning the big bucks on the other side of the table here. But I think it's important that Department of Administration and the administration in particular, I mean, outline very directly and clearly what exactly is involved, what's covered, what is not covered, because now certainly I'm finding out, I'm sure my other colleagues can concur, what is not covered by this new system, and that we're going to have existing systems in place. So what time are we actually going to phase out the current AF 400? And the vendor, what is the plans for that then? If we're certainly migrating to this new technology, then what's happening with the old technology? When does that end if we have no contract with them? Or do they just no longer exist on the table here since you're saying the government already owns this data?
Well, if you're talking about one specific machine, it's not necessarily a single machine. What we're talking about in this context is really just the financial partition that is on the hardware today. So there is no plans to take out the existing hardware. In fact, we're looking at upgrading it to the next series just because there's too many hardware and security exposures currently in place. So in order for us to keep the existing applications in production, we're moving to upgrading the hardware itself within the next few months.
Okay, so what is the dollar figure? Is there any dollar figures or one or number of companies that has this information, or where are we with that? Is this gone? Is this financial obligation gone from the previous operator of the system?
No, well, again, in the context of the financial management system, we haven't been paying any maintenance on that system itself, and we're allowed by license to actually use the code and the data. We just don't have support, and what that means is anything happens to the code, if there's any kind of problem with the application itself, we don't get support from the vendor, and that's just.
So that's what we've been doing for how many years now?
That's exposure we've had probably for the last 4 years.
Nice to know. I've never been aware of that at any budget hearing that I've attended in the last 4 years. And the odds are fairly good I was there. Do you, Senator Tello? So now we're finding out that up until this point, we have been exposed for the last 4 years.
The exposure on the just means that if anything happened with the code, we don't have any alternative unless we reach out to the vendor and he calls his charge.
And they may choose or choose not to respond then, I assume,
That's
if they're not
correct.
being compensated. And why? Who made that bright decision?
Well, that was not really something that was under my.
So whose purview would have been under? I'm sure you would know.
Well, collectively, it was under both the Department of Administration and the Office of Technology together.
So then we go back to you, Mr. Burns. Who and why and how did that decision get made?
I hesitate to say this, but I mentioned before that we failed to negotiate a continuing contract with the existing vendor. The existing vendor wanted to have a 5-year contract, knowing that we were going to move to a new contract, which may not have excluded them. You know, it was at that time open to bid by anybody. We didn't want to tie ourselves into a 5-year contract. So the contract expired.
And did you announce to us and the rest of the government that we were exposed for this period of time? If we ever needed to respond or get their assistance, we wouldn't have that available?
I don't think I announced it to you.
Well, not me in particular. I mean, I'm only one of 15, but did the Oversight Chair know that?
I don't know. I don't know whether the Oversight had it, but apparently, if it was a risk, and it paid off.
Well, it's nice to know we're exposed like that and you got to make that decision. I don't walk away. You know, I always try to find a level of comfort when I sit in these hearings, you know, on issues that are affecting our community and making decisions, especially when we have to budget and fund this government. And I don't walk away from comfort this morning from this hearing that I was almost yawning at earlier, because I'm trying to absorb all the different pieces and components and trying to put in some understandable means in my mind so I can process what the information is that I'm taking away from this hearing. And what I'm hearing is we have bits and pieces of a system that's not totally in place yet. We have a $31 million contract. And how are we went in and entered into this agreement with this vendor. And what do we put on the table to procure? Since everything we procure, we have to have funding available.
The first year funding was ARP. The subsequent years, we've, just like any other multi-year contract.
Wait a minute, stop right there. Okay, so who made the decision, the funding? I mean, we appreciate ARP funding. Trust me, it's very nice. But was that anticipation now that the rest of the general fund was going to absorb it the second, third, fourth, or fifth year?
That's what's been budgeted, yes.
Oh, now I understand it's been budgeted, sir. I mean, I can sit here and write my own budget, but my point is, does it have our concurrence?
Well, it has.
Are we now in the second year of this contract? Now, are you coming in the year 2025 for us to now budget for it, or did we budget for it last year? Is this the first time we're expected to budget it?
The legislature budgeted for it last year.
I'm sorry?
The legislature budgeted for it last year.
Okay, so now we're in our third year?
Yes.
And we're going to budget this year?
It's in the executive budget
Okay,
request.
so the contract only covered the first year, your initial contract then?
Like any other contract that we enter, every payment is subject to the availability of funds. And it's true of this contract, it's true of any multi-year contract that we procure.
And then we'll just go along and see what other change orders come along that weren't anticipated then?
I'm not sure what you
How
mean.
much do you have so far of change orders? I know Senator Chris asked that, but again, you know, we asked the question, you can just reiterate it.
Yes, I'll reiterate.
What are we up to now?
We agreed a 200 and, what it was? We agreed a $223,940 change order for training.
For what?
For training.
For training.
For the vendor to do the training. And then...
Okay, that wasn't included in the original contract?
No, it wasn't, because we were going to do it ourselves or subcontract it to somebody else. And then we also agreed a $98,000 change order to scope and define work to replace the DOA and DRT POS systems. These are the systems to which you've referred that are in the AS400 system, and we were trying to determine whether there was an economical way of funding it and transferring it to the new system. And we determined there wasn't a cheap way of doing that. So that's why we decided to leave it in the old system.
Well, I guess we'll just figure it out as we go along. I mean, I'm a little concerned about that, Madam Chair. I really think you need, Madam Chair, to hold a little more oversight, because some of the things that have come out this morning, I'm not comfortable with. I'm not comfortable with the fact, with some of these decisions they've made on their own, and now we're just hearing about it. I think we all have a collective interest of wanting to ensure our government is run effectively and efficiently, and more importantly, accountably, especially from Department of Administration. That's what we'd like to see. And while you've made these decisions on your side, not knowing about it till now is just not, it's very concerning. And I don't think I'm the only one expressing that concern. I think other colleagues here feel the same way, unless they're going to come out and say otherwise. I think we're concerned about that. And you know, this whole idea that somehow this is going to make our lives better, I think we need to ensure how we can address making sure that these payments and late payments don't occur because of the system, because the last couple of months, from the outside, it just doesn't sound smooth. Especially if you're on the other end not receiving either deduction you anticipated as being paid for to your bank, and that's something now you have to go worry about because the government's transferring its system to a new system. Most people don't care about that. What they care about at the end of the day is making sure that these payments are properly paid. So again, I just think, I appreciate your responses. I'm not thrilled about them. The fact that you're responding nice, but they're not at a level that provides me any comfort. So I would recommend, Madam Chair, I think you need to put a little more rein with regards to this issue and hold these hearings a little more frequently so that we, and more importantly, the rest of the public, and including the government that's affected by that, has a greater understanding of exactly what's going on. I don't think we should leave that to the Department of Administration, especially if now we're just finding out information I think the rest of us should have known about earlier. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to ask and answer questions.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Tadegui, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'll try and make this quick. My colleagues asked most of the questions I had. First, I want to thank you for being here to provide us with information. And the first thing I had on my list was, to have the oversight chair to make sure we have every oversight, probably every month. I mean, like Senator Barnett does with the DOE. He has it every month and brings them in. This is something that's greatly needed. Not, just not only keeping checks and balances here, but it helps us learn more about what you're doing and what's happening and why certain people, for instance, was not invited or tasked with, to participate in the negotiations of something like this too, as well. If you can, Mr. Byrne, who is a part of this negotiations on the contract itself, and why wasn't there key personnel involved with the purchase of the system?
I'm not sure exactly what you mean, but this contract is the responsibility of the Department of Administration. Right. We did talk to some of the other agencies about this. Some of those agency directors are now moved on to other agencies, but it was a regular procurement. We don't take part in the procurement of everything. There are contracts that are entered into without the participation of Department of Administration. So
I really didn't see that.
This was just done in the normal way.
Yeah, I really didn't see that. There was the whole presentation that you gave us today. Didn't really emphasize with the other agencies and departments, on their input on this. So I think that it lacked that, number one, and I think we can correct it, maybe, if we can. It's obvious that corrections are being made with certain costs, entailed to do so. So I've always been, but I would like, Madam Chair, to ensure that maybe we can get another oversight, maybe on a monthly basis, because, we are starting to see some cracks, things falling through the cracks. One of my biggest projects that I've been looking into, and I've been for a while, is cybersecurity. With regards to this online, the ability for other people to go online and look at this, other than the regular BBMR, DOA, stuff, what was the intent for everyone to be able to go into this system and be able to read it? Was that the intent of this?
If I may, I'll ask Mr. Lujan, who's a real expert on this, to comment on cybersecurity. But actually, although the access is available more readily to those who are authorized to go in. Most of the complaints that we heard about earlier was people who weren't authorized to go in or weren't authorized to see the whole spectrum of information as they were under the AS400. And thank you for asking that question, because there was a statistic that was bouncing around in my head that when we started this process, 743 people were authorized to access the AS400 system. The auditors commented on this. We've responded to that by removing people who no longer needed access because they moved on or whatever. So the intent was to make those who should have access easier to access and prevent those who shouldn't from doing so.
Okay, thank you for that. Regarding Mr. Lujan on cybersecurity, you know, we've seen certain hijacks happen, especially at the hospital. We saw UOG being hacked, GCC, certain agencies. So I know that we have the company here, I don't know how well you have your system in place to avoid any type of infiltration of the system that you put in place. Is it something part of your contract? I'll have Mr. Lujan talk about what he has it, and then what you have on your side. Has it been incorporated in the contract to address, you know, certain system blockage from anyone infiltrating the system? So, Mr. Lujan, if you can please tell me, what are you doing and what type of maintenance cost are you implementing for this system to ensure that there is no hacking or being cyber attacked?
Well, Senator, thank you for that question. In the first place, it's one of the due diligences. It's one of our main duties is to secure the system, and so we've been working very, very closely with Mr. Welch and his team, the Performa team, and he could probably testify that we're the biggest in terms of questioning their access and their controls and the cybersecurity piece of it. So we continue to dialogue on that to assure whatever their requests are vetted through us and secured. So we're pretty confident about the security overall. And
Mr. Lujan, have you asked this company if this system has ever been hacked before? Has it been used in other jurisdictions in place or anything like that? Have they been hacked before?
Well,
have you asked them that question?
I've asked most of those questions. The reality is most systems already have been hacked, and you just don't know you've been hacked. We've been hacked a number of times, and we have our own mitigation processes in place.
Okay,
so
yeah, I'm very familiar with
I'm
that.
not surprised if this system has there is no system that has not been hacked.
So, Mr. Byrne, that being said, do you have a manual way of addressing it in the event that Cyberly were booted out for some reason? Is there a manual process? Because now you're going to have people not being able to receive their checks, their paid, to pay their bills because of the system. We have to have some kind of contingency plan. Is that already on the books?
The contingency, we can't do a manual process. Right? Like you saw, there's like hundreds of thousands of transactions that we have to process. There's no way we can do that manually. The remedy is, like Mr. Lujan said, is to identify the risk, mitigate the risk, and should say some unfortunate incident occur, right, then you have to recover from that as quickly as possible.
It's like a backdoor plan. Actually, in cyber security, I believe there's a backdoor plan where you're able to access new type of revenue information or data that's into the system. Right now, you're using one system here. And there's a way to infiltrate most of that into another backup system, if I'm not mistaken, if this should go down, then you're not going to lose the data. You're not held hostage. So maybe, Mr. Byrne, if we can let Pharma to speak on this,
yes,
on
I'll ask Mr. Welch to speak, but it is all backed up. It's not like we're going to lose the
data and information. Right. Okay. Sir, yes. Please, if you may.
Yes, thank you. Brian Welch from Performa. A couple things. Yes, the system's backed up. There's also a disaster recovery plan that we're working with Team Guam on in OTEC with regards to how long this will be down, where would we back it up, how often would it take to access the backup. Also keep in mind that the accounting system is Microsoft. And Microsoft doesn't take for granted the onus on cybersecurity. So we work directly with them. We've had sessions with them. OTEC has met. We've talked through the cybersecurity and what Microsoft as a whole does to protect their systems. Dynamics 365 is, the system that we're using. It's a Microsoft system that's used all over, the world. So they take pride in their, where they are with cybersecurity. So it's not just a homegrown system that we need to worry about cybersecurity. We do have Microsoft helping us with those decisions.
Well, thank you for that information. I'm pretty sure there's new innovative ways as technology is growing of ways to hack into the system that you've done. So that's a constant threat. So is that part of the contract that you have with Government of Guam to implement any type of new systems or anything like that in case there's new technology or new type of hacking, like a new virus is basically what it is. Is that part of your contract?
I don't know. OTEC would know. I don't know if that's written out as a part of the contract or not. I can get that information, but I don't know offhand if that's.
Ooh, that's something we need to know. It's almost like having building maintenance. One of the things Government of Guam fails to do all the time is they build these really nice facilities, but they never incorporate the cost of maintenance. And now that we're going in a technology position right now with everything going in that direction, it's the new maintenance of cyber security and of any kind of system. So, Mr. Lujan, I'm looking forward to hearing from you later on with that, because I know, it's me in between lunch right now, and I don't want your stomachs to hate me right now. So please look into that. Oversight is needed, 5 phases. And the other thing I have is very quick, Mr. Byrne. There's been a lot of glitches, of course, we've been mentioning with payroll. And the payroll deduction for April 6th pay period has not been addressed. Can you please answer if that has been addressed on the April 6th deductions?
Correct. So the April 6 deductions, they have been resolved and remitted as of last Friday.
Last Friday? Just last Friday?
This past Friday.
Has it been implemented? Has it been in place? I mean,
we resolved the issue with the data that came from the payroll system, the new payroll system to the new accounting system. We've identified what caused the issue, and the payables team were able to push out the deductions on Friday morning.
Friday morning,
Correct.
right? Not just yesterday, but not just the other day. Okay,
Just
Friday, right?
Last Friday.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yes,
Okay,
we
So
confirmed that
April
last
6th.
Friday.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have, and I've looked forward to the next oversight, and definitely when it comes to cybersecurity, Mr. Lan, if you can send me some information, especially if there is an agreement with the company that we are in contract with, to have that. Sorry. Oh, yeah. That's true. They should know if they have a contract or not when it comes to maintenance when it goes to cybersecurity. So looking forward to that information. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Chadwick. Senator Paris, you have any questions to the panel?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And sorry, I had to step away for a moment. So probably a lot of the questions are already answered. But, the reason I'm here is I wanted to have some sort of assurance that we are going to get to normalization, right? So migration is such a huge process. And I remember sitting in that meeting at Adelup, and there was this, expectation that it was going to be rolled out in so many days. I believe it was in February. So we're going to roll it out, it's going to be implemented, and it was going to take place in a stepwise fashion. And so now we're here today, we're seeing a lot of the glitches, a lot of the issues. And so maybe the question is for Ms. Chief Technology Officer. In your testimony, you stated, looking ahead, the successful implementation of the GFMIS system promises significant benefits. And so maybe from your perspective, what do you see promising as far as ensuring this migration is, getting up to speed so we can operate normally within government? So as far as like troubleshooting, what are the biggest issues you have been seeing? And, what are these residual issues, that you're seeing? And, was this anticipated in the migration? So normally you would expect best practices when it comes to migration. Is this something that follows best practices in regards to migration of a system? I mean, I know the AS400 is, everyone knows that should have been, updated. But when we make these huge changes, I think now, of course, looking back it's obvious that, maybe more stepwise or smaller steps should have been done to ensure that we were cleaning out these problems beforehand. So what can you tell us about the process and how can we be assured that it's going to be corrected soon?
Well, Senators, thank you for that question. As I'd like to echo Director Burns' comments about how change is always difficult. People are really uncomfortable about change, and with these particular systems and their transformation, there is undoubtedly a lot of change. But of course, the benefits will outweigh a lot of that discomfort overall. But we also have to keep in mind that we're taking a legacy-based system, paper-laden system that has been tweaked for the last 35 years, that works well with the comfort zone of most of the employees to date. And so to make that change and that transformation, it's going to be very, very difficult. But the benefits, again, will outweigh any of the discomfort that we're going through today. The glitches, those are all things that we're prepared for, that we can respond to, and as long as we're working together, there's no systems that don't have glitches, and that's why we're there. We're there to work together and navigate through all this. The relationships we have with the Department of Administration and the other agencies, as well as the vendor itself, as long as we're talking to each other, which we continue to dialogue, we're hopeful we're going to reach that end. And so this is, I know Director Byrne mentioned this is one of the smoothest that he's experienced in terms of upgrades. I've been through many, many upgrades. This is definitely a different kind of upgrade, but I've seen worse, and this is smoother than most, but it is different. But I'm still very, very optimistic about the benefits that will yield once we go into production. And so it's just going to take time as we mature through the process. This is a 5-year process with the vendor. And so far, the relationships that I see in place, very optimistic. As long as we don't go dark and we continue to talk to each other, I'm optimistic we're going to get through most of these problems. Payroll in itself is probably the most difficult module to work through, and we're getting there. The fact that we've gone live with several departments is really a great achievement, and I think it's realistic that by August we're going to be able to sunset the payroll module on the AS400. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, so in that, the page on the slide, it says on hold pending resolving data transfer issues. Is that still a problem, or has that been addressed? Or what is a data transfer issue? What does that mean?
I'm sorry, which one are we referring to?
It says on new payroll system implementation progress. Okay.
I can respond to that, ma'am?
Yes, please, yeah.
So, yes, the first two payrolls that we've migrated to the new system, we've had issues with the deductions, although the salaries were successfully processed for employees. We've had delays with getting the payroll deductions across. We've resolved that issue as of last Friday for the last pay period. We've identified what caused the issue. So this week, we still would be going through testings to make sure there's no further glitches before we then roll out the remaining. That's why we're putting them on hold, because of the issues that we've, but so far we're still going to process the salaries, obviously, of the old ones on the old system until we resolve that in totality.
Okay, and then what does it mean by data transfer? Is it just the data entering process?
The payroll deductions, dollar value, and the vendors coming from the new payroll system, going into the new accounting system. That's where the delay was
Okay.
the two systems reading each other's information, basically.
Okay, and so once you figure that out, maybe the next
Yes.
agencies will be smoother?
Correct.
Is that the idea?
And so we
Okay.
want to eliminate any further issues that would cause the delays to the payroll deductions before we move the remaining agencies.
Okay. And then the other thing is budget. So we're coming across budget season, and do you see any potential impacts to that as far as ensuring that we are going to pass a proper budget with the FMIS system?
Senator, with respect to our budget or the budget of the government?
Budget of the government.
No, I don't think so. The executive budget request went in January, which was actually before the beginning of the system. The budgeting system is now in the data warehouse, so you can actually use that report to total up. Never before have been able to do this. Total up that budget in any way that you want to sum it or report it. So I think it would only be enhanced by having this information in the new system.
Yeah, because some of the recent conversations were from agencies that they didn't know how much money they had. And so they had to call BBMR and, trust that, they were giving them the information.
Yes.
So,
and so is accounting.
do they have access to that? Do the agencies have access to that information?
Yes.
Or do they have to go through BBMR to get that information still?
This weekend, this information was put into the data warehouse, and as the training is rolled out, and we've got the people that need to be trained. Correct. That information is available to people. But thank you to BBMR, who've been very helpful in giving that information, and also to the staff in accounting who always responded where people were unsure where to look for that information.
So maybe if I can ask this gentleman, sorry, what is your name again?
Brian Welch.
Brian
Yes,
Welch,
yes,
hi.
ma'am.
So yeah, can you probably give us a little bit more information regarding the revenues and expenditures? So how does this work, and how can we gain access to that information? I guess for those that are allowed that access, are there issues with that? Do you see issues, or what are some of the glitches that you're seeing, if any?
So the data was residing in the budget system, and the agencies did not have access. They have access to the data warehouse. So over the weekend, we were able to pull all the data needed to run these reports, to view this data into the data warehouse, and it's there now in production. So I don't foresee any issues. This is, as Director said, as they take their training class or their CBTs, the agency will be given access to that reporting tool to view their own data.
So is it real time, up to date?
It refreshes every 2 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, so the budget system is real time, and it refreshes from my understanding, it refreshes the data warehouse every 2 hours.
Okay, so we should be okay with the budget?
Absolutely.
Okay. What about procurement? I remember when I was at that meeting, it was stated that instead of taking 90 days, it would take 10 days. Are we there yet?
We're nearly there. We're still dealing with the backlog from the old system, but the really new, which of course at this part of the financial year we shouldn't have too many, but the really new requisitions are being dealt with in that kind of time frame, assuming that we get the correct information from the requesting department.
Okay, so you said nearly there, so what does nearly look
Well,
like?
nearly is because of the backlog, right? So we're having to deal with the backlog as well as deal with the newly raised requisitions. But I think the backlog, we're kind of like, I would say, 75% through. And of course, here we are, we're about to start May, which is getting towards the end of the financial year. So the major purchases should already have been identified and notified to GSA.
Okay. Well, thank you. I don't want to stand between you and lunch, but I'm sure you answered all these questions, and I appreciate you responding to them. And I hope we can continue to have this. Thank you so much, Madam Chair, for this oversight.
Thank you very much, Senator Parsons. Thank you for staying with me. First, I really just want to take the time to thank our government employees for coming today to ensure that this body and our fellow GovGuam workers and the taxpayers on this island are fully informed of the critical effort to complete the creation and installation of the new FMIS. And I say that with much sincerity and heart. So I've been one who's been in the government system for over 42 years. May not look it, but over 42 years. So I want to share that back in January when the new system was officially launched, DOA Director Ed Burns said that change would make GovGuam's financial reporting faster and more accessible, and most importantly, make the work of those who use it more fulfilling. And I remarked at the time that I hope that the new system will improve all aspects of the government, from greater transparency to faster tax refund and human resource processing. I truly still believe these laudable outcomes are within reach, and I still have confidence that our hardworking civil servants at DOA and OTEC can help get us there. I say that because all we need is honest partnership and an open mind when concerns are raised, and a willingness to correct the course. I trust that following today's discussions that all of us will recognize the same. And I encourage all government employees to keep the legislature informed about the good and the bad encountered as we continue to develop modules, offer training, and begin rolling out our new FMIS services. This input will definitely be invaluable to making sure that this effort is a successful one. And, you know, many years ago, like I said, I've been here a long time, over 40-some years, and through the past OPAs and all that, there was talks about how do we modernize, how do we get up to date, how do we move forward. And this was that effort, and that's why I commented on Director Burns' comments in January. And like I said, we want to continue to see it work. Some folks have, differences or perspective of how things need to get facilitated, but in the efforts of coming together and bringing everybody together, we can get at least the positive outcomes, and that we definitely move for what's right for our government. And having the staff back here and the supporting, right, the boots on the ground, really helping you guys do the facilitation, it makes it better for all of us. And again, thanking the vendor for being here at our invitation, because, you know, sometimes you just need to bring everybody to the table to make sure that, you know, it's not a he said, she said kind of thing, but all the perspectives are on the table. And if we need to come back and follow through and wait another quarter or even before that, then I have no problems working on that. I want to make sure that when we go through this process, that it's a win-win for everybody, and we all have a better understanding on how we make our government more accountable and more transparent. And I know you, Director Ed, disclose for the record, I always call you now, that we've always been there, primo frank, you know, the effort of showing that with modern technology and what we're facilitating, sometimes we really need to make that change. And it's not easy to teach an old dog new tricks or have people change, you know, when the mindset, I always say now I'm not computer literate, but I'm computer a little bit, but every day is a learning day. So with that being said, this has been a very long oversight hearing. It's been almost 4 hours. I want to take the time to thank the panel members for your patience and for answering all the hard questions that come up here. And I know a lot of times it's not easy, but in the ultimate end, you know, we want to make sure that it's good for all our government workers and all those that are involved in this process. So, I know there's no more questions because it's just me and Senator Paris left. If anybody wishes to share any additional comments or questions, they can do so by emailing it to Senator Muña Barnes at guamlegislature.org, or they may send or hand deliver it to us at 163 Chalan Santa Papa, Hagatnya, Guam, 96910, or to my office at the Bank of Hawaii building at 134 West Soledad Avenue, Suite 411, Hagatnya, Guam, 96910. So if there's nothing further, I will literally call this oversight hearing on the updates on the implementation of the government of Guam's new financial management information system, which we call FMIS, officially adjourned, and it is 12:41 p.m. in the afternoon. Thank you for being here. Sanamasi.